You ever thought about what would be the most effective way to kill a movement? To kill a coordinated effort for change? The first go-to strat would probably be to just murk the dudes at the top, but that doesn't always work out. The movements of Gandhi and MLK kept chugging along just fine after they both left the server, with new martyrs to boot. No, the most effective way to actually kill a movement is to introduce individuals with tons of charisma and ambition, but who don't actually give a shit about the movement, who are just really there for themselves. A perfect example of this was Gamergate, a movement that a decade ago was ignited over gamer indignation at corruption and lack of ethics in games journalism. It was quickly, and when I say quickly, I mean almost immediately, hijacked by culture war grifters on all sides of the political spectrum who just used it as a vehicle for lining their pockets and gaining clout. While GG accomplished little in the end, its legacy persists in various forms, including one of the most cartoonish, supervillain-ass Wikipedia pages I've ever seen. ISIS doesn't have terrorist organization in its title. Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy don't have sexual deviant in theirs. The Gamergate? Oh, they had to let you know it was a harassment campaign. Also, they had to lock it down so only the select elite of Wikipedia can edit it.
Man! What did he do to make them niggas that mad?
But there's also a less famous movement that's also been gutted by charismatic grifters. Comicsgate. As you can guess by the name, it was obviously aping the style and probably the notoriety of Gamergate, which was around 3 years old in 2017 when hashtag Comicsgate first began to circulate. While the drama of GG was still fresh in everyone's mind, CG was just getting off the ground, ruthlessly trashing the trash comics that had flooded shelves and long boxes throughout comic shops all across America, as well as trashing the malicious behavior of the people making them against fans all across social media. You probably didn't know any of this nerd shit was going on. And I don't blame you. Even most geek communities, till this day, still don't know exactly what Comicsgate is all about outside of it involving comics. Contrast that with Gamergate, which, while still a niche and nerdy subject, has had major publications putting out stories about it, activists who spoke about it in front of the UN, and even had a notoriously cringe Law and Order episode dedicated to it.
What happened?
These guys, they just can't stand women in gaming.
What did they do to you?
They leveled up.
The only people whose feathers were ruffled by Comicsgate were the people within the American comics industry. And the American comics industry is very, very small. Just to quickly convey how small the American comics industry actually is, there's a manga called Kimetsu no Yaiba, better known as Demon Slayer if you aren't a complete fucking weeb. It's pretty popular. I'm sure a lot of you watching this have at least heard about it. At the peak of its popularity, Demon Slayer was not only the most popular manga in Japan, it was the most popular comic on the planet. Demon Slayer was so popular that in 2020, it outsold the entire American comic industry by itself. This is the dwarf-sized state of the modern American comics industry, and this was the catalyst for hashtag Comicsgate. CG started as a movement of fans of comics who hated what their hobby had become and wanted the industry to change. It definitely had elements of a culture war, but it was ultimately a consumer revolt. The OGs of Comicsgate, some of the most prominent including Captain Cummings, Ingleteen, Unranked Chevron, Douglas Ernst, and Richard Meyer, aka your boy Zach, had YouTube channels that predated the Comicsgate hashtag. A lot of them followed a format of taking a modern comic and tearing it apart figuratively, and in Meyer's case, literally. They would also critique the pros themselves, which was the easiest thing to do because the American comic industry has some of the most brain-rotted, terminally online professionals of any industry I've ever seen. The way these niggas were straight up disrespecting the shit out of their own customers, you would think they were rock stars and rappers who were balling out of control. Most of them were not. We're not talking regular broke. We're talking begging strangers on the internet for rent money broke. Still, CG struggled for a sense of legitimacy. It was a grassroots movement of aggrieved comic fans, but that's all they were, comic book fans. They were consumers who had lots of critiques of the industry, but they were still just a bunch of non-comic book making nerds on the outside of the industry looking in. And the industry could dismiss their critiques as such. At least that's what they could do until a very talented, charismatic, and ambitious comic book artist freshly exiled from the industry, found his new home in Comicsgate, Ethan Van Sciver. Ethan Van Sciver, also known as EVS, Uncle Ethan, the Human Sunbeam, Caesar, and the King of Comicsgate, is a distinguished veteran of the comics industry, making his debut in comics with Cyberfrog in 1994.
So what was your first published work?
Cyberfrog #1 by Hall of Heroes, the most reputable independent comic book publisher in Elkhart, Indiana.
Despite all his time in the industry and the credentials he amassed within, he still ended up parting ways with DC over what he claimed were political differences. He was a little too right-wing to hang in the now super leftist comic industry. Allegedly. I gotta add that in because Ethan also expressed that his reasons for leaving was that he felt like a small cog in a big machine and that he wanted to leave DC to spread his wings and work on IPs that he actually owned. It might seem inconsequential, but it does fundamentally change how you might view Uncle Ethan's entry into Comicsgate. Was he really just a political refugee who was essentially forced out of the industry just for being openly Republican? Or was he always planning on leaving DC once his contract had expired and he just hopped aboard the CG train because he saw it was chugging in the direction he was heading anyway? I'm bringing this up because Uncle Ethan ain't exactly the most honest guy, and you're gonna see that he's not just the king of Comicsgate, he's also the king of opportunism. Now, some of you might be wondering, Mikey, how could Ethan Van Sciver be the king of Comicsgate when he wasn't one of its founding members? That's a very good question. One that even Comicsgate OGs who witnessed the rise of EVS are still a little confused by.
When EVS first showed up on live streams and started backing Comicsgate and everything, we thought it was a boon. Oh my gosh, we have not only a comic book professional, but we have one of the greatest artists in comic book history. We thought it was such a boon, and then all of a sudden we're doing our thing and we're saying, King of Comicsgate, what? He's the newest member. What are you talking about, King of Comicsgate? And I'll tell you what, he repeated the lie so much it became the truth.
See, when Ethan pulled up on Comicsgate, he already had a connection via Richard C. Meyer, the then most popular affiliate of CG, and everyone in CG was immediately wowed, because this wasn't just a commentator, this was an accomplished, talented veteran of the industry, and an ambitious and charismatic one at that. See, EVS is the type of dude politicians and business execs thank God stayed clear of their careers and went into comics instead. He's equal parts a natural-born car salesman and an asshole. And these qualities of Uncle Ethan are ultimately what killed Comicsgate. Well, he didn't do it solo, but he definitely was the MVP of this shit. The first mortal wound inflicted on early CG actually didn't come from Ethan, but from his internet platonic boyfriend, Richard Meyer. In March of 2018, Meyer put out a vid about Brian Pulido, the creator of the comic Lady Death, and he talked about how Pulido had grossed tons of money through several consecutive successful Kickstarter campaigns for his books.
So this is Brian Pulido. He's a popular indie comic in the 90s. He's come back strong like bull in the Kickstarter game. I just want you to focus on this. He's coming up on 250,000 sales. So he's backed 47 and he's created 11. And this is huge. He's on $250,000 for a comic. It's just a comic. And he's been doing one, I think he does like every 6 months or so he does one. And he's been steadily making more and more each one.
This gave Meyer, who was already making plans with John Malin at the time, another comic pro who would follow Ethan Van Sciver's lead and leave the industry for Comicsgate, the encouragement to finally pursue a plan he'd been thinking about for a while. Rather than go through the traditional model of indie publishing and deal with Diamond's costly, antiquated-ass bullshit, Meyer and Malin would just crowdfund their new comic book, Jawbreakers, instead. That man on the outside looking in era of Comicsgate was now officially over. And this right here was the first mortal blow of Comicsgate as a movement. It fundamentally shifted the character and purpose of Comicsgate. CG was no longer just a consumer revolt. No, now it was a brand. Before, CG was a bunch of industry outsiders, just commentators who, through passion and love for the medium alone, talked about comics and called for change in the industry. Now you had guys like Ethan Van Sciver, John Malin, Mike S. Miller, and even Earthworm Jim creator Doug TeNapel throwing up that hashtag Comicsgate set. And they weren't doing it out of pure passion and love for the medium like the OG CGers were. Now they were doing it to sell comics, to get super chats, to move merch, to make money! This was great if you were someone who mainly just wanted to make money selling comics without still being part of the mainstream industry. If you were someone whose main purpose in Comicsgate didn't involve stacking paper to the ceiling, well, Doug TeNapel put it best.
I think the problem with Comicsgate was always that it was I've always said this, that it's a brand that pretends to be a movement. It's a business that pretends to be a movement. It's a YouTube fandom that pretends to be about comics. And there's trusting, well-meaning, great creators and backers that think they're contributing to a movement or a cause, and really, it's a compromised business.
This was a few years after he left and eventually disavowed Comicsgate. Now, why would Doug TeNapel do that? Well, don't worry, we're gonna get to it. Now again, the transition from hashtag to brand was just part of what killed early Comicsgate. There were several more steps, and all of them involved Ethan Van Sciver. The first was when a few CG OGs like Doug Ernst and Captain Cummins noticed that gatekeeping was becoming more of a thing in Comicsgate, with the guy everyone seeming to defer to for who's cool and who's not being EVS, who was surprisingly pro-gatekeeping. His logic being that gatekeeping is a problem for SJWs because they're evil, but it's cool when we do it because we gotta keep out those evil SJWs. Captain Cummins in particular wasn't a fan of this growing shift in CG values, and he definitely wasn't a fan of EVS, who's the main source for a lot of it, and he voiced as much both in his videos and in his infamous tweet. Well, at Ethan Van Sciver can keep the money. I don't want a shitty Ninja Turtle ripoff. Do I need to fly down and say it to your face to be a man? Or are you just gonna tell me to kill myself? Seems comic pros always end up being the worst people, like DNC has stated multiple times. At the time, everyone thought Captain Cummins was just having a tism fit, going off for no good reason. Maybe because he was just jealous that he was now just a commentator in Comicsgate, while Ethan, who came after him, was both a more popular voice in CG as an influencer, and also had the most crowd-funded CG project, Cyberfrog Blood Honey. But looking back, Captain Cummins was really just peeping the bullshit from Ethan Van Sciver several years ahead of everyone else.
Comicsgate is devolving into your typical hierarchical struggle for control and influence. So Captain Cummins is accusing Ethan Van Sciver of being a new gatekeeper of comic books. Yeah, it probably is actually. Seeing his personality type and looking into what Ethan Van Sciver has done before on Facebook in the groups that he had there, he always tends to end up leading a cult of personality type of situation, with him as the fulcrum and all these different characters then almost sparking from his central, like a Green Lantern battery. So he's found his new group as Ethan Van Sciver. He's found a new little group to take over, and that group is Comicsgate. And I think what Captain Cummins is doing right now is reacting against a hierarchical, almost natural, organic even, but a takeover nonetheless.
Ethan, with his new circle of comic pro capos, had effectively turned Comicsgate into his own personal internet fiefdom that he would have the most influence over, in which his own platform, Comic Artist Pro Secrets, served as the central hub of. He might not have been officially crowned, but Ethan Van Sciver had become the undeniable king of Comicsgate. But Captain Cummins wasn't going for any of that shit, so he peaced out, nuked his channel of almost all its CG content, and left the movement he started but had quickly become unrecognizable to him behind. He may have been the first major figure of CG to disavow the movement and bounce, but he wouldn't be the last. If you looked at Comicsgate in 2018, you would think CG was on the road to great things. They had multiple books in the works with crowdfund campaigns that were doing crazy numbers. Their YouTube channels were blowing up like crazy. and articles both pro and anti-CG were popping up and showing the community's growing influence. The sky looked like the limit, but just like Icarus, Comicsgate fell as it was getting too close to the sun, or rather, the Frog King kept yanking the movement back down to his dirty-ass pond with one drama arc after another. One short but pretty important one was with a guy called Theodore Beale. Beale, better known as Vox Day, the Dark Lord, or Teddy Spaghetti, was a writer and games journalist turned far-right blogger. He's been a veteran of this culture war shit for a good minute, going blow for blow with SJWs in the Gamergate trenches. In fact, he had been publishing comics with right-wing politics long before Comicsgate was a thing, and he claims it was never about money.
You know, I don't own Comicsgate, I don't own Archaven, I don't own Dark Legion, I don't own any of those things. The idea that we are doing this because we think that it is somehow going to make money is amusing.
Which is what every dishonest grifter says while they're grifting. When hashtag Comicsgate got underway, Vox thought his day had come and threw himself into CG's growing roster. He believed that the conservative cultural tidal wave he had been dreaming of was finally coming in, and planned to surf it into a successful crowdfund campaign for his comic, Alt Hero, drawn by Helix Hayes and written by comic industry legend Chuck Dixon. And he succeeded. For a few weeks until Indiegogo shut his campaign down in October. Now why did they do that? Well, apparently a leftist and dedicated anti-Comicsgater, Jason Youngbluth, successfully cucked Vox Day by convincing Indiegogo that Alt Hero supported hate speech and far-right sentiments. Now it didn't really. Despite what the title might suggest, Alt Hero 1 and 2 were basically Tom Clancy graphic novels. There's nothing politically alt-right about them. But that didn't spare Teddy from getting his spaghetti spilled all over the floor. He would sue Indiegogo over this, but the more annoying legal dispute for him would be over the Comicsgate trademark. See, back in early September of 2018, Vox Day announced that he was starting a new imprint, Comicsgate, and that this imprint would be used to signify that a comic was 100% SJW free. A lot of CGers weren't fans of this move at all, especially Ethan, who had succeeded in turning the Comicsgate hashtag into a brand already, and even had a show, Comicsgate Live, where he would bring other creators on so they could pitch their books to the audience. Vox Day, on the other hand, had literally never used the Comicsgate name for anything up until he announced his imprint, leading people to accuse Vox of infringing on a Comicsgate trademark. Now Vox, with a level of confidence that only a white nationalist / disgruntled games journalist / Gamergate veteran could possess, asserted that he wasn't stepping on any legal toes because the Comicsgate trademark still didn't belong to anyone, since nobody had filed for it yet. Tragically for Vox, a Florida man would cuck him out of his ambitions mid-stride, just like Indiegogo had. Antonio Malpica, a pro-CGer who was fundraising for his own comic and was very partial towards Ethan, actually applied to register Comicsgate as a publishing trademark with the intention of giving it to Ethan in the future. It was also brought to Teddy's attention that nobody in CG would want to use his imprint or even be associated with the name Comicsgate anymore if he insisted on using it for his own purposes. Vox tried to go on the offensive against Ethan, calling him two-faced and claiming that he was just fooling everyone else so he could use CG to grift for money. In tonight's Dark stream, I talked about the panoply of shameless lies Two-Face Van Soyver, aka 2VS, has been caught telling about Comicsgate in the last 24 hours. I also rejected his invitation to go on the show because I don't tolerate or talk to liars. Sooner or later, and judging by the fact that they're still spazzing out on Q, it will be later, his sad little band of comics gatekeepers will realize that he is the scam artist who's been lying to them all along. I pointed out how Two-Face's crowdfunded commission model is totally incapable of revamping the industry because his $12,300 cost per page simply cannot be expanded. He's basically another pinup artist. He's producing 48 pages at 1.87 times the total cost, for which we are producing at least 1,148 pages. We are already employing 20 times more working artists than he is. YouTube-based televangelism is a great personal business, whether you're in comics or self-help, but it's not one that will have much relevance for the industry over time, nor is it capable of transforming it.
And I mean, folks, where's the lie?
As objectively, factually true as Vox Day's words were, They fell on deaf ears. Nobody in CG really gave a fuck about what he had to say. For pretty good reasons, let's be fair. And EVS managed to effectively gatekeep him out of the movement.
Now, Vox Day's alt hero Q has nothing to do with Comicsgate. It isn't Comicsgate. He's not associated with me or anyone that I know of within Comicsgate.
This was the last cuckening Vox Day would suffer before leaving the movement. Well, it's more like he got the door shut in his face, but whatever, that nigga hit the road. He would change his Comicsgate imprint to Arxhaven, and that was that. Ethan successfully bashed the Fash and put that punk bitch-ass Nazi in his place for trying to co-opt the Comicsgate hashtag just to make money. But Mikey, didn't Ethan co-opt the Comicsgate hashtag and use it to make money? Yes, that is exactly what he did. What Vox Day tried to do, Ethan had already done, which is why Vox was so confused why everyone else in Comicsgate was so mad at him. And also why, besides not wanting CG's reputation to be affiliated with someone like Theodore Beale, why Ethan was so mad at him. Because Vox was strolling through his hood without checking in and potentially fucking up his money. But why did most of CG not have a problem with Ethan doing the same thing Vox Day was trying to do? Oh, that's easy. It's because Theodore Beale is a pseudo-intellectual wing cuck with zero charisma, while Ethan is a witty showman with charisma out the ass. Vox Day versus EVS was basically the real-life equivalent of the Virgin versus Chad meme. So EVS prevailed, but Vox Day wouldn't be the last guy he tried to gatekeep from CG in 2018. The next most prominent case would be Timothy Lim. Tim Lim might be the most hard-working artist in modern American comics, originally gaining popularity with some well-received Trump parody books, Thump and My Hero Macadamia around and shortly after the 2016 election. He moved on to less election-themed books like Black Ops and then, in 2020, the breakout success, Common America. But before that, back in 2018, he was just another conservative comic creator caught up in the momentum of hashtag Comicsgate. Tim was an early Comicsgate supporter and was already gaining a lot of popularity in the scene without even needing much of a YouTube presence or getting any shine from Ethan Van Sciver. Something that was damn near unprecedented. He did eventually end up getting attention from Ethan, but not the type he wanted. It was during a big stream in July of 2018 that Ethan and Tim talked to each other for the first time. Before they could exchange words, Ethan was doing what he did best, blabbering.
I'm not the leader of Comicsgate. When I say that's not what I want, that doesn't mean that's how it's going to be. Somebody just asked me my opinion about it.
Hear that? Uncle Ethan's not the Kang of Comicsgate. We know he's not because he keeps telling us. And you can take Uncle E at his word. Which is exactly what Tim Lim did.
I know where Captain Cummings is coming from because of an exchange. I found out about it the day after it happened, and it was transmitted to me by several people, and they wanted to know my opinion on it. So I have the transcript right here, and I'd like to read it to you.
Tim took Ethan so much at his word that he brought the transcript of a previous stream and repeated Ethan's words back to him verbatim.
And this is what it says. I said to Zach, and I said to all of them, quote, stop making these Trump comics. Stop. I think Chuck is working on some Trump in space book. Look, it's not 2016 anymore. Where Captain Cummings is coming from is that statement of, I said to all of them. And that's not true.
Right, because, okay.
He revealed that Ethan was sneak dissing him in his books and said that he had shared these sentiments with Meyer and the others. But Tim talked to the others in Comicsgate and nobody could confirm that story. Now Ethan claimed that he didn't know that Mark Pellegrini and Tim Lim were working on a specific Trump book he was talking about, but there were only like 4 niggas making Trump books at the moment, one of them being Tim Lim, who worked on Thump, My Hero Macadamia, and his future campaign, Trump Space Force. Now I know what you're thinking. Mikey, Ethan already knew about Trump Space Force and that Chuck Dixon was working on it. So how could he know that Chuck was writing the book, but not that Tim Lim was drawing it? That's a good question, one that Ethan struggled on this stream to come up with an answer for. Honestly, all this, we don't need these political Trump books and CG talk of EVS just came off as kinda gatekeeperish. And not for the more justifiable reasons he had with Vox Day. This just seemed really petty. In fact, this might all seem like petty stuff to you. You might even think Tim was being a little oversensitive for bringing this up during his and EVS's very first interaction with each other. But this little interaction meant a whole lot to Ethan. Timothy Lim had broken one of the unspoken rules of Comicsgate, a rule that's obvious to everyone in CG now, but wasn't as obvious back in 2018. He called out Ethan on stream for lying and made him look stupid. Ethan couldn't even argue because Tim was literally using his own words against him. He apologized and essentially bent the knee to Tim. Timothy Lim made Ethan Van Sciver kneel in their very first interaction with each other. Nah, this seemingly petty interaction stuck with Ethan. The Frog King wasn't gonna let Tim just go out and live his regular life after this, because Ethan was gatekeeping. Tim was making these Trump-themed books and giving outsiders the impression that Comicsgate was a pro-MAGA movement, while Ethan was trying to keep CG as politically neutral as possible. Right-leaning centrist at the absolute most. Desperate to rid himself of this meddlesome Asian Trump supporter from Arkansas who made the movement look a little too conservative for Ethan's taste, and who had also bitched him on stream in front of everybody, EVS would dip into gay ops territory for the first time. But Ethan was smart enough to know that he couldn't get his own hands dirty and make it too obvious that he was trying to get rid of Tim. So he would lean on what was essentially a shitposter task force made up of fans on the fringe of Comicsgate who would engage in all the psychological warfare that Comicsgate proper couldn't do without fucking up their optics. Still, they would be pro-CG and, most importantly, pro-Ethan Van Sciver. The name of this group was War Campaign. No, I'm not bullshitting. Ethan Van Sciver really had his own personal internet troll army called War Campaign, led by a coked up Canadian with a talent for getting into internet drama. Oh wait, that's the wrong Canadian. That one's sober. I'd be surprised if Ro had been substance free for even a full month in the past 6 years.
I made my way up through the ranks, motherfucker, taking out opponents, gay op by gay op, motherfucker. First thing I did, handpicked, selected men from the peasantry, men who I could trust, you understand? Got some leverage over them, so a little bit of dong picks, a little bit of poontang picks, boom, we went in and we said, all right, let's do this. Who wants to fuck shit up, motherfuckers?
He was the undisputed leader of War Campaign and the most loyal member of Ethan's Legion.
Hello, my name's Praetorian. You may know me as a former member of the Inner Circle of War Campaign. Here you can see that Ro says I'm an integral member of War Campaign. At the very head you have Ro Kabir Kumar, who is the absolute undisputed leader of War Campaign. Things run like this. It goes through Ethan Van Sciver most times, to Ro, to the Inner Circle, and then from the Inner Circle it'll go out. War Campaign doesn't like people who criticize Ethan Van Sciver at all. If you are critical of Ethan Van Sciver, you are immediately a War Campaign site.
That's not me making a joke, by the way. These dudes literally LARPed as Roman legionaries and hailed Ethan Van Sciver as their Caesar.
Hail Caesar! Hail Caesar!
Hail Caesar! Hail Caesar!
Hail Caesar!
Oh, I know you pressed play on this video expecting insanity and brain rot to be gradually introduced. Nah. Even back in 2018, when Comicsgate was still a young and healthy movement, we already had this level of autism pumping through this community's veins. And again, this was all just to get rid of Tim Lim.
That War Campaign is a collection of your fans. I mean, this is really where it started, Caesar. This is it. I mean, you know it. You know, this is it. We wouldn't be on the internet otherwise. I don't think we would have started a channel.
Well, you just brought up Tim Lim. Tim Lim's the whole reason why we fought.
While War Campaign would eventually succeed in their original mission of getting Tim to fuck off, it wouldn't be through any direct attacks on him. Tim would leave CG of his own accord after War Campaign claimed the scalp of a co-creator of his, a fellow CG affiliate who would also become a bit of a thorn in Caesar's side. Nurkish. Now, Nurkish wasn't CG per se. By his own admission, he was only Comicsgate adjacent at best.
You were involved with some Comicsgate-y stuff, right?
I guess I was involved with it and that I knew people. The people who discovered my stuff were in Comicsgate. I just wanted to make fun of woke. I don't like woke stuff. I think it's funny. I think it's cringe, and then I got lumped in with them. But once they wanted me to like carry a cross, I was like, I don't give a fuck about this stuff.
He didn't really care about comics or any culture war nonsense at all, really. But he did like making videos talking about stupid shit, and modern comics had plenty of that.
On a side note, did you know that Mags has a GoFundMe to get fake tits? Here's my question.
Why do you need fake tits when you already have them from being fat? A lot of the CG community liked Nurkish's content. He even was occasionally brought on Ethan's stream along with Cecil, who was a CG member, whenever EVS needed some chaotic energy. There was even a comic in the works between the two, with art being done by Tim Lim. Now there was one problem. Nurkish was a little too edgy for Ethan's taste. More precisely, Nurkish's Discord was a little too edgy.
He's got this Discord where he's a free speech absolutist and he could absolutely let these people in. I started to receive pictures of his Discord of an extreme, and when I say extreme, I have a good sense of humor, extreme anti-Semitic material.
Now, Nurkish didn't really control or even contribute that much to his Discord. He popped in a few times to talk, but for the most part, it was just a Discord server with his name on it that he didn't have a whole lot to do with. And because Nurkish is such a adamant free speech advocate, something he naively assumed most of CG were, he never bothered to moderate and just let the guys there make whatever edgy memes they wanted to when he wasn't around. Then, returning to the stage for a second time, entered Jason Youngbluth, according to Ethan's sources. Youngbluth, along with other dyed-in-the-wool anti-CG SJWs like Rentfamous, had peeked inside the Discord, saw it was a disgusting bed of Nazis, and somehow, these SJWs managed to get Nurkish's docs.
I start to receive word that Nurkish is about to be doxxed by the same people that kind of hang out with Rentfamous. And I get very concerned because Nurkish's privacy is important.
And they threatened they would drop it if Nurkish didn't shut the Discord server down. Man, that's crazy. That anyone bought this bullshit story from Ethan 6 years ago. Like, are you serious right now, bro? So let me get this straight, Ethan. There are these anti-CG SJWs who managed to get Nurkish's docs out of nowhere, and they want to drop it because of some edgy jokes in his Discord. Rather than dox this guy they believe to be a Nazi immediately, and further validate their claims of Comicsgate being full of far-right Nazi chuds, they sit on it and say they won't put it out if Nurkish just shuts down his Discord. They want this alleged Nazi to get rid of the Discord with all the evidence of the alleged Nazism they're trying to expose him for? And somehow it was you, Ethan, who just happened to catch wind of all of this ahead of literally everyone else, including Nurkish?
Jason Youngbluth and people around him were threatening to dox Nurkish and then tie him to me and Comicsgate, and thus successfully bring down our Indiegogo platform.
Ethan, I know you're a comic illustrator and not a comic writer, but come on, bro, you gotta be able to come up with a better narrative than this. Was it really the SJWs who were raising a ruckus about Nurkish's Discord? Or was it you who knew from what happened with Vox Day's campaign that vindictive SJWs like Rentfamous or Jason Youngbluth could get Indiegogo to take down the campaigns of supposedly far-right creators, and you, who have become hyper-vigilant about anything in or adjacent to Comicsgate that could be classified as too far to the right, had War Campaign fetch Nurkish's docs, pass it on to the SJWs in question, and then gave Nurkish an ultimatum in the form of a friendly suggestion to either get with the program and get rid of his Discord, or kick rocks down the street. These are obviously all rhetorical questions, because a former member of War Campaign literally confirmed everything I just said.
Here you can clearly see that Pan and Gat are talking about Comicsgate Anonymous. That was an operation that we ran to go ahead and expose the Nurkish server and to run Nurkish out of Comicsgate, or in an attempt to. We didn't want to be have these attached to our main account, so we went ahead and made a alt called Comicsgate Anonymous, and we went ahead and ran ops, leaked that shit to Rentfamous, in the hopes that they would take the story and run with it.
Nurkish was the first real in-group casualty of War Campaign, and this little Discord drama, as small as it was, really was the point of no return for early CG. EVS was now starting to move like he was some indie comic dictator, complete with sycophantic followers and secret police in the form of autistic shitposters who LARPed like they were members of a Roman legion.
There are people who think I'm ordering War Campaign, and that's why this meeting exists right now. I want to make it clear that, War Campaign A does not represent me, not one bit. And I am unaware of, and I do not ever, and have never asked War Campaign to do anything to somebody else ever.
And people keep saying stuff like, we were never told what to do. We were never told what to do. I was in so many Ethan would get mad. Ethan get mad and pull us in a Discord. And yeah, he definitely start telling us what we can and can't do. And then if someone starts breaking the rules, then you get Ro down your throat.
Looks like Captain Cummins was on to something when he called the human sunbeam out his name earlier. OG Comicsgate was dead, and in its place stood Comicsgate 2.0. The hashtag had successfully been co-opted and monetized by Ethan Van Sciver. Ethan also finally managed to get rid of Tim Lim. After Nurkish got snaked on and bailed on the cash grab project, Tim followed suit and left CG to focus on his own future projects with Mark Pellegrini. This would be a blessing in disguise for Tim and Mark, as they would go on to make a campaign for their successful comic series, Common America, and also found their own comic book print, Iconic Comics. The OGs of Comicsgate also weren't having it, and unlike Tim, who just quietly packed his bags and headed out the door, they raised a bit of a fuss before they dipped out.
Comicsgate, it was a grassroots consumer movement, and for a while it was just simply based on this understanding that mainstream American superhero comics, that they were just really bad, that they were just really mediocre, and that's how it came together. I think that what's gone wrong in the past couple of months is that it has just literally become all about these crowdfunding campaigns. It's literally become solely about making money and not so much about pointing these things out and holding people to account and holding for professionalism. Ethan Van Sciver has said multiple times that he just really wants to be left alone to make his Cyberfrog comic, which is great. But the problem is that so often it seems like people have to basically go to Ethan Van Sciver to get approval. It seems like that he is the de facto leader of Comicsgate, right, which used to be a leaderless movement. And it seems like that he has used this power more than once to basically choose who he does and doesn't want in this movement. I mean, he's done it to Tim Lim basically twice. First with the Trump Space Force thing, where he said he just didn't flat out want that. And then recently with this cash grab thing, where Nurkish was trying to distance himself from this. And according to EVS, according to you, Ethan Van Sciver, on the stream that you did, you flat out went to him and said, "Your Comicsgate, whether you want to be or not, because it looks bad on me, then I can't have this associated with me." So if that's what Comicsgate is or isn't now, that it's whatever makes EVS look good or look bad, well, that's not a grassroots consumer movement anymore.
In the eyes of many of CG's old guard, like Unranked Chevron, Ingleteen of I Love Comics, and Captain Cummins, the leaderless consumer movement they have founded had been subverted and turned into a hierarchical business model with stringent gatekeeper-like tendencies and internal politics that looked a whole lot like the industry they were originally railing against. Looked like you can take the comic pro out of the industry, but you couldn't take the industry out of the comic pro, because these dudes brought a whole lot of garbage from the industry along with them. And they cultivated a new culture in CG that completely sidelined its early principles. This new culture's main goal wasn't so much critiquing and trying to enact change in the comic industry as it was making Ethan Van Sciver and his friends a lot of money. And anyone who got in the way of that, intentionally or unintentionally, was not a friend of Ethan Van Sciver. And if you weren't a friend of Ethan Van Sciver and Comicsgate going forward, well, you could go fuck yourself. Between 2017 and 2018, Comicsgate seemed unstoppable. Anti-CG were losing their fucking minds because they couldn't stop the momentum, and all these Comicsgate campaigns were printing so much greenery, you would think Jerome Powell was running Indiegogo. What nobody knew was that this golden age of CG was going to be very short-lived. The first of many major headaches actually originated back in 2018 for Richard C. "Ya boy" Zach Meyer, a veteran of the Marine Corps and one of the founding fathers of Comicsgate. Now, despite being treated as Comicsgate's Moses, Meyer was never officially a part of the movement. This never stopped Ethan from encouraging other CG pros to keep working with Meyer and encouraging his fans to keep supporting Meyer's campaigns and generally just globbing and glazing your boy to completion. Now, back in May of 2018, your boy hit a little chrome dome shaped speed bump named Mark Waid, a distinguished comic writer who had an almost religious hatred of Comicsgate and anyone affiliated with it. So when Wade learned that Meyer and Malin's book, Jawbreaker's Lost Souls, was going to be published by San Antonio-based comic publisher Antarctic Press, he sent what was essentially a Taliban night letter to Antarctic, warning that if they published Meyer's book, Wade and the other pros in the industry would slander and struggle session the shit out of their business for working with a racist, hate-filled, foaming at the mouth Nazi like Richard C. Meyer. This assertion of Wade's that Meyer was a Nazi or racist was kind of insane, considering that his favorite comic book character is a nigga on a skateboard, and all of his kids are mixed. Regardless of the absurdity of Wade's claim, his intimidation tactic was super effective, and Antarctic Press dropped Meyer's book, stopping Jawbreakers from making it onto shelves. Your boy wasn't standing for that shit and launched a lawsuit against Wade in late September for torturous interference, to the applause of the rest of the CG community that he wasn't a part of. Granted, not everyone in Comicsgate was so eager to support Meyer in this lawsuit. Some, like Douglas Ernst, a fellow US military veteran, even tried to warn Meyer beforehand about what he predicted would just be a considerable strain of Meyer's time, money, and mental health. But your boy persisted. Honestly, Antarctic dropping Meyer would be more of a blessing than a curse, because he would receive a new wave of financial support for his current book, his future projects, and his legal funds. In spite of the lawsuit and the bad press, Comicsgate's momentum didn't seem like it was gonna stop anytime soon. But then, something really problematic happened. Something that almost no one in Comicsgate seemed prepared for. The time came for them to actually deliver their books. Of the myriad issues that would plague Comicsgate, the most damaging from a purely business standpoint was the late fulfillment of books. Taking tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars from backers and then taking forever to fulfill became the rule rather than the exception in Comicsgate. A lot of guys didn't fulfill their campaigns at all.
All I know about Comicsgate is it's really obvious a lot of people are making like a lot of money. Like you see like one comic book is like hitting $500,000 and others hitting like 80,000 and 40,000, like you guys are doing gangbusters, right?
That's right.
So you're going to have a ton of people coming in who might be, you know, have ulterior motives or might see an easy payday, looking to shill some stuff and try to make a quick buck.
Little did Jim realize that he was preaching to a den of heathens, most of whom would become the very bad apples he was warning them about. Even Ethan, the king of Comicsgate himself, would be very late fulfilling his first book, Cyberfrog Blood Honey, which was supposed to be in the backers' hands by November of 2018, but wasn't actually fulfilled until December of 2019. Matter of fact, let me just go through a list of CG affiliated creators who launched campaigns before 2020 and were behind schedule with fulfillment. I'm going to be nice to your boy Zach and exclude Jawbreaker's Lost Souls because he actually had an excuse for his book being late. Well, for his first book being late. Monster MD by Von Klaus. Due early 2020. Fulfilled April 2021. 1 year late. Cyberfrog Blood Honey by Ethan Van Sciver. Due November 2018. Fulfilled December 2019. 1 year and 1 month late. Long Harbor by Alejandro Mirabel. Due February 2020. Fulfilled July 2021. 1 year and 5 months late. Brutus the Badass by Donald DeLay. Due April 2019. Fulfilled April 2021. 2 years late. Red Rooster Golden Age by Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweiser. Due March 2019. Fulfilled April 2021. 2 years and 1 month late. Brand by Antonio Bryce and Cannon White. Due January 2019. Fulfilled April 2021. 2 years and 3 months late. Deathsworn by Carl O'Rowe. Due April 2019. Fulfilled April 2023, 3.5 years late. Doomkicker by Elliot Fernandez. Due February 2020. Fulfilled never. 4 years and 9 months late and counting. Dead Detective Red Crimson by Antonio Malpica and Shinobi Sasquatch by Cal Jameson. Both due October 2019. Both fulfilled never. Both 5 years late and counting. Sovereign by Andrew Huerta. Due May 2019. Fulfilled never. 5 years and 5 months late and counting. And finally, Conflict Claws Out by James Dean Anderson. Due April 2019. Fulfilled never. 5.5 years late and counting. The craziest thing about James's book being over half a decade late is that he's still working in CG under Ethan Van Sciver.
And you'll have the line 'em up Tommy gun. I've actually got James Dean Anderson, who created the Rainbow the Brute logo. He's going to redo the lettering that says line 'em up on the barrel to be in Rainbow the Brute like font. so it'll look much nicer. Just as line them up right there.
And of course, he's doing work for Rainbow to Brute, a campaign Ethan will be 3 years late on fulfilling come this December. You know what? Let me ease up on James a little, because while he's the tardiest boy with turning in his work, hoeing the shit out of your backers isn't a unique quality to him. Take the Brightwisers for example. Oh, Mitch and Elizabeth managed to eventually get Red Rooster into their backers' hands, but that was only after they pulled one of the skeeviest, most shameless plays I've ever seen from a crowdfunding campaign. Pay attention, cause this is some S-tier grifting. This duplicitous couple bamboozled their backers into thinking they were only funding Red Rooster. In reality, Mitch took that money and used it to fuel his startup, a new comic company called Allegiance Arts. Not only that, but he and his wife then made a deal with Walmart to stock Allegiant Arts books at Walmart shelves. You remember those floppies you would just randomly find where the trading cards or magazines in Walmart were? Yeah, those were Allegiant Arts books. And one of those books was Red Rooster. The only problem was that Mitch and Elizabeth backers still hadn't gotten their copies of Red Rooster Golden Age yet. Their backers were a secondary back burner priority who would have to wait 2 fucking years to receive the book they gave the Brightwisers money to make, while the Brightwisers used that money to make their dreams come true. Just pure, uncut Griffcanium, the same drug that poisoned and killed Gamergate. Oh, but spoilers, the Walmart deal with Allegiant Art fell through because Mitch's company couldn't deliver the new books on time. Congratulations, Mitch. You fucked over your audience and your reputation just so you could create a company that's just as bad at meeting deadlines as you are. But hey, at least they finished it. That's not always a guarantee when you give someone from Comicsgate your money. Still, the Brightwisers' idea of going bigger with their comics, of working with an established company and not just staying cloistered away in a small indie comics corner wasn't a unique idea to them. Ethan had similar designs, not just for him, but for Comicsgate in general. He wanted CG to have that mainstream connection, and he managed to make it happen. In May of 2019, it was announced to the shock of people both pro and anti-Comicsgate that EVS will be collaborating with comic company Dynamite Entertainment to make limited edition variant covers for Dynamite IP Vampirella, available for backers on Indiegogo. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, but Mikey, if the purpose of Comicsgate was to revolt against the industry through critiquing and eventually competing against it, wouldn't collaborating and building ties with Dynamite be a huge conflict of interest? If this was still early Comicsgate, I would say, yeah, it would. But this is Comicsgate 2.0, and the main purpose of Comicsgate 2.0 isn't to be a consumer movement looking to change the industry. It's for Ethan Van Sciver and his friends to get paid and stack paper to the ceiling. Ethan's ambitions to intertwine CG with the industry was one of the reasons why he used War Campaign to go after guys like Nurkish and Tim Lim in the first place, because Nurkish was too edgy and Tim was too pro-MAGA. In other words, they were bad for business. You would think having a brigade of toxic gay oppers would also be bad for business, but apparently not to EVS, who gave a deaf ear to the growing number of complaints about War Campaign, both from fellow CGers and even from his own backers.
People saying, I want a refund, Ethan. I've given around 25 refunds to people who are saying things to me like, your fans are terrorizing me, and I no longer want to support your project, and I have to give up money. I have to actually go into my own bank. By the way, I can't refund money. The money is already in the business account. It's already been invested in various things. I have to go into my own personal bank account to refund people who are asking for refunds because there are efforts to intimidate or bully people from people who are saying Hail Caesar.
Ro Kabir and his crew just glazed Ethan too much and were too useful to their Caesar for him to order their crucifixion. War Campaign's first major target within Comicsgate in 2019 was Mike S. Miller, another former pro turned Comicsgater who launched his own campaign, Lone Star, shortly after joining CG. The thing that would really put a target on his back happened during Pride Month. Miller, who's a proud Bible thumper like Edwin Boyette, Doug Ernst, Doug TeNapel, and many others in CG, tweeted a small quip Pride is a sin. Not the most inspiring material in the world, it was just a joke. Uncle Ethan, however, wasn't having it. Just to be clear here, EVS didn't really give a shit about any microaggression or whatever Miller may have inflicted upon the LGBT community. Ethan's not a liberal. This is, after all, the same guy who was perfectly cool with Vox Day until he tried to co-opt the Comicsgate hashtag, who was cool with Nurkish until he thought his Discord could cause problems for CG in the future, who has been on the kill stream multiple times. No, Ethan wasn't having it because Dynamite's president, Nick Barucci, wasn't having it. And Ethan was very keen on keeping that Dynamite train chewing along, at least until his contract with them wore out.
Yeah, basically we had a conversation with EVS, and he had told us that he had conversations with Barucci about, basically getting Mike Miller out of Comicsgate. For Barucci and the SJWs at Dynamite, his tweets, Miller's, pride tweets, would be problematic, so yeah. I don't know the extent of it, but EBS told us that Barucci did not want Mike Miller in Comicsgate. No, and no lesser words than that.
So the Frog King, having become a stalwart defender of the Rainbow Tribe, went off on Miller and then sat back while his war campaign Legion went to work on that ass. Their tactics typically involved high IQ psychological warfare, like making fake poorly photoshopped porn of their targets, creating fake screenshots of non-existent DMs, spamming pictures of dildos, and strategic mass backer refunds. This last one was especially dastardly because crowdfunding money doesn't just sit around. If the project manager's smart, he's already put it toward the project. If he's not, he spent it on something frivolous and stupid and just wasted the money. Either way, those sudden refund requests were nasty. Almost as nasty as the barrage of rainbow dildos War Campaign would spam in their target's timeline. Ethan liked to pretend he was disgusted by these tactics of War Campaign, but that's cap. He thought that shit was hilarious. The hazing eventually wore Miller down, and he finally left Comicsgate, thoroughly tired of War Campaign and their nonsense.
Money changed the nature of Comicsgate. If money's involved, then people's behavior changes. And it's another vector where people can be put under pressure, because people can say, well, if you don't accept all this, I'm not going to buy your book, and I'm going to tell people not to buy your book.
And that's the coercion of War Campaign, right? That's who I've been butting heads with. And it's that's how they think they can control my behavior, is oh, well, if you're not going to do what we say, then we're going to remove our solemn pledges to you, which is taking money out of my kids' pockets, food out of my kids' mouths, so to speak, because I disagree with them about stuff.
And he wasn't the only one. People inside and outside of Comicsgate were getting tired of Ethan's Canadian capo and his squadron of flying monkeys flinging shit in every direction. One of them was the only guy in CG who had greater industry prestige than Ethan himself, Earthworm Jim creator Doug TeNapel. Doug joined Comicsgate back during his early heyday, but he hasn't been part of CG since 2019, and during that absence, Ethan and his Comicsgate Legion have never missed an opportunity to throw shade to Naples' way.
I shouldn't do this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Dirtworm Doug decided to launch his own spite campaign against Comicsgate on Kickstarter. Fuck this piece of garbage. $17,614 in the first 36 hours. That's pretty embarrassing.
What could Doug have possibly done to earn this level of ire from EVS? Well, according to Ethan, he used Comicsgate just to milk them for his new book, Bigfoot Bill, to get back ownership of Earthworm Jim, and then bounce from CG without giving the community the thanks it deserved for helping Dirtworm Doug dig his way out of a hole. But just like every narrative Ethan pushes about a friend turned enemy, this story just doesn't add up. For one, milking Comicsgate backers for all the money you can get is something every creator in CG does. It's literally been the default behavior of CG creators from 2018 onward. And out of them, Doug was actually one of the very few who delivered a high quality product to his backers on time. For two, Doug did and still does to this day, even after all the BS, give Comicsgate props for helping him out like they did.
When I left Comicsgate, I was done with it. I was done. And I meant it, and I finished the dedication of the book to you. After I left Comicsgate, I made sure that dedication was there to you, and my thank you to Comicsgate in the credits. I wanted to make sure that I kept that there to show my respect for what people how people helped me.
And for 3, the actual reason Doug left Comicsgate in the first place was because of War Campaign and Ethan not only enabling them, but straight up throwing gasoline on the fire and encouraging them as they smoked up the joint. See, Doug had been trying to corral War Campaign for a while, intervening in a feud between some members of War Campaign and a guy called Crypto Comics.
Did not Panboy say that he would go to Matt's house before he made the video and call him out?
No, absolutely not.
Didn't say he would go to his front porch?
No, they said they were good. Pan, what did you say exactly? If you want to see all these screens, we could pull up all these screens
Doug,
later.
do you want to get it on video, bro? Because you fucking fund it, and it will happen. You buy the plane tickets for everyone to come see this, Doug, since you want to hype it like a promoter.
Dude, I'm not
happen.
hyping. I'm not hyping anything.
Okay, anyway,
you want to start shitting comics again? Let's start shitting comics
I'm
again.
not. Pan, I'm clearing things up. I'm trying to save Comicsgate, bro.
Crypto Comics is a pussy, and I will kick his fucking ass.
A CGer called Brad Ashworth got caught up in the crossfire after Crypto helped him edit his Indiegogo campaign page for his comic Handyman. This, for some reason, incensed War Campaign to go after Brad too. After this, Doug just threw in the towel and pieced out of CG, tired of the thankless and fruitless effort of attempting to herd the feral cats that were Ro Kabir in the rest of War Campaign.
Doug, you made a commitment to me before you made a commitment to Interplay, and you said to me, Ethan, I'm not going to talk bad about Comicsgate.
I don't remember ever saying that.
You don't remember ever saying I'm going to be respectful of the people of the fans that gave me $200,000 from Big Bill.
I don't remember saying that, Ethan. I remember telling you that I wouldn't go public that I left Comicsgate when I first left over Brad Ashworth.
Yeah, Doug was out. He bailed before the Pride is a Sin tweet drama with Mike Miller even started popping off. But like the bitter divorcee that he is, Ethan did not take to Naples quietly packing his things and leaving in the middle of the night so kindly. Oh, EVS was very much in his feelings, started to throw shade at Doug, and like always, a lot of Comicsgate, especially War Campaign, took after Caesar's lead and started mudslinging as much as they could at the Frog King's designated nemesis.
When you're trying to herd 100,000 followers, they think they're doing what you want by hitting my campaign. And they hit my campaign, my email, my customers, my business all day.
Doug TeNaples was just on Deadwood Dale's channel. And he said that when he left CG and Ethan threw his little hissy fit about not getting acknowledged at San Diego Comic-Con, Doug had to issue like $25,000 in refunds.
My favorite part about this little talk Doug and Ethan had on Ricada's stream was how it revealed how paranoid Ethan's mind really works.
Doug, are you reaching out to comic book professionals and trying to mobilize them against me in some kind of weird gay ops effort?
I heard about that, and I believe that was Tug, that I was in a private talk with Tug, and Tug he was the little bird in your ear. Someone said a little bird in your ear. Malin's doing like Doug's doing the Legion of Doom. I don't have a plan. There is no show. Tell me when a show shows up, Ethan.
Tug was one of them. But there are 2 other people who actually sent me a long conversation that you had with them about this.
I've had long conversations with almost everyone who will hear.
So it wasn't just Tug. So you are actually actively involved in recruiting people to do what? To do what?
Nothing. Show me what? Nothing.
This, my brothers and sisters, is called projection. Ethan thinks that Doug is trying to mobilize the troops and plot behind his back because that's what Ethan does. EVS was doing shit like this against Tim Lim for way less than what Doug TeNaples was putting up with. The idea you can just part ways with someone and then not immediately plot against them and make them out to be some super villain is an alien concept to Ethan's mind. Like, for people who are familiar with Uncle Ethan, can you think of anyone who severed ties with him and managed to maintain a cordial relationship afterward?
I remember when we were told to hate you, Doug. Fuck, I remember that too. We were told, by Ethan Van Sciver that you had done something, like he didn't like something you had done, but he never told us what. We never got a satisfactory answer.
Going around saying that I did something nefarious or I'm trying. No, that's just a straight up lie. I've never done that. And
So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Now, I've only been going over a few of the feuds between the big fish of CG, but there was squabbling all the way from the top to the bottom. Everyone was getting into it with somebody. John Malin, John Della Rose, Liam Gray, Mandy Summers, that Umbrella guy, Yellow Flash, Edwin Boyette, Nasser, Mitch Brightweiser, literally everyone in War Campaign.
Man, and that Comicsgate stuff is, I'm staying way out of it. I see the writing all over that wall.
Comicsgate, to me, the reason it had value for me was that it fought against the mainstream. That's not what it is anymore. It's just lame-ass infighting.
Look, if y'all are in some Comicsgate drama, get out. Don't pick sides. Don't get involved in this. I'm telling you, this is how things fall apart.
Every single time I see a live stream, it's two comic skaters fighting with each other.
Comicsgate was supposed to be about criticism of the comics industry, and then second, making books, selling them to people who want to buy them.
A guy like Zach and EVS, their YouTube channels used to be growing legitimately, significantly every month. In February of 2020, Comicsgate is significantly smaller than it was in 2019. These are facts.
Somewhere along the way, people added in drama, gay ops, infighting, backbiting, whatever you want.
And why do you think that that is? Do you think it's because once money was injected into the hashtag, everyone got fucking egomaniacal about it? Or do you think because it's just a coinky dink?
I will strongly urge people to just walk away from whatever that nonsense is.
While there was plenty of infighting and inside drama, Comicsgate's external problems weren't going anywhere. In fact, they had only gotten worse. The main difference that set these guys apart from the initial wave of anti-CGers in 2017 and 18 was that they weren't SJWs. They weren't necessarily dyed-in-the-wool conservatives either, but their problems with Comicsgate had nothing to do with them being an enclave of racist, sexist Nazis or whatever goofy shit cornballs like organized chaos or actual fandom would say. No, their problems with Comicsgate was that they were dumb, lying pieces of shit. These guys are a different beast than the SJW anti-CGers are, because unlike them, they actually do research and keep receipts. Two examples being Thomas Royloop of Shitty Webcomics and Vickyverse of DNV Investigations, who both exposed Ethan during the Ribbit Coin scandal of 2019. Ribbit Coins being some Cyberfrog merch Ethan and Dynamite made as part of their collaboration together. You would think these would just be part of a stretch goal, but nah, they were a whole separate campaign priced at $25, the same price as a Cyberfrog comic. Ethan believed the price range was perfectly valid because the coins were 99.9% silver with 25 karat gold plating.
Silver coins are 2019 JFK half dollars. They're straight from the mint. They're not available at any bank or in circulation. They're mint silver proof coins for 2019. 99.9% pure silver.
Here's the problem. The Merrick Mint, the company Dynamite got to make the coins for Ethan, didn't offer colorized JFK 99.9% silver half-dollar proofs. So how did EVS get them? He didn't. Thomas Royloop revealed to the world that Ethan's Ribbit coins weren't colorized JFK 99.9% silver half-dollar proofs. They weren't silver at all. They were regular ass Kennedys made up of 75% copper and 25% nickel. Literally 0% silver. Oh yeah, and they weren't really colorized either. That little Cyberfrog on them? Just a piece of paper. Not even a sticker, but just an inked piece of paper held into the coin with a primer coat that Thomas was able to easily peel off with some mayonnaise on a butter knife.
I was gonna set a timer, but it came right off.
Again, EVS priced this at $25. After Vicky posted a video about this with the beautiful title, "Did Ethan Van Sciver commit criminal fraud?" Ethan jumped on a stream with Vicky.
So I am not interested in defrauding people, especially not for a paltry sum of money like that. That's not something I do. So I would very much appreciate it if you and everyone else who's accusing me of fraud in any way would cease and desist, because my lawyers will kick your asses if you continue to do so. I expect you to not involve yourself in what would legally be called defamation.
Defamation? Really, Uncle E? You know Vicky didn't actually accuse you of committing fraud in the video, right? All she did was present receipts of you falsely advertising your product as something it most certainly wasn't. She also pointed out how you, out of nowhere, edited the Ribbitcoin campaign page to get rid of the part where it mentioned it being 99.9% silver. Crazy how you didn't care about that for months until shitty webcomics posted those tweets. Mikey, aren't you going a bit too hard on Ethan for a mistake that was mostly Dynamite's to begin with? Ethan refunded everyone anyway. Okay, but that's not what he did. EVS didn't automatically refund everyone, he just offered refunds via PayPal. This means that you had to personally request for a refund from Ethan. This is a very important distinction because this meant you had to give Ethan your personal information if you wanted your money back. Now here's the problem with giving the Frog King your information.
It's all over the place now. Everybody knows your name is Matt. Right?
Wow, Evan. Do you always dox your former customers like this?
When they're not my customers anymore, I no longer care.
But to what degree can we place the Ribbitcoin scandal upon EVS's shoulders, really? Remember that Ethan is more of a car salesman than a proper businessman. He doesn't really understand the product he's selling. Dynamite just told him these shits were real silver coins, so he took their word for it.
When did you first have those in your hand?
The Ribbit coins, I got some samples, probably way before that. I got samples of Ribbit coin probably in September. They were given to me by the licensee who received them from Merrick Mint. You can go to see their website and you could see that they make these coins. They make them, I actually investigated this myself yesterday. That's how, that's the first time I actually looked at Merrick Mint.
He shouldn't have, especially when it's his brand that's literally slapped on top of it. But still, Ethan wasn't trying to scam and scheme. I mean, selling this shit for $25 would be a scam regardless, but he wasn't actively trying to fuck over his audience. The mistake really was Dynamite's in the end. Unfortunately for EVS, this incident wouldn't be the last time Dynamite screwed him over. But before we get to that, we've got to briefly look at Preston Poulter of Pocket Jack Comics. Preston is a noted Comicsgate critic, and his CG detractor stock skyrocketed when he announced in April 2020 that he had filed for the trademark of Comicsgate. But Mikey, I thought Ethan already had the Comicsgate trademark. You would think he would, but after Antonio Malpica filed for it, the trademark was left in limbo because Malpica was still producing his comic Deck Detective Red Crimson. Yes, the one that's 5 years overdue on fulfillment right now. Since owning a registered trademark requires you to actually produce a commercial product, the Comicsgate trademark was technically left up for grabs. Preston had been using the name of Comicsgate for a good year in his video series Last Week in #Comicsgate, where he had been chronicling the autism of CG week by week.
People in the chat, especially War Campaign, Hail War Campaign, find all of the stuff that I want you to basically do a deep dive on Preston Poulter, and I want you to find everything that he's posted, find his appearances on YouTube and Twitter, and I need you to store and archive them.
On the face of things, Preston seemed like a more competent and dangerous rival for Ethan than Voxday was. He was even a comic creator, independently publishing his own books and getting them out on time in between making videos. Sadly, Preston came to the game unprepared and got caught with his pants down. No, literally. Ethan found footage of Preston Poulter without any pants. Because as it turned out, Preston Poulter was on that Mia Khalifa timing with a short but very productive porn star career, typically with him in the role of a male sub or cuck. Now I'm only highlighting this for 3 reasons. 1, to make it clear that Ethan and War Campaign are one and the same. They're of the same mind, on the same wavelength, who do the same dirt digging, and both think that porn is the perfect psychological weapon against their enemies. 2, throughout this era of CG, EVS was super concerned about Comicsgate's image. But here this nigga is tweeting out cuck porn. If you were following Comic Pro Secrets at this time, cuck porn would have shown up on your timeline. This is the dude who wanted Nurkish gone because his edgy, tiny-ass Discord that nobody except a few of Nurkish's fans cared about. But you going on a kill stream? You keeping War Campaign around? You posting money shots from your ops' old porn career? Yeah, that's not bad for Comicsgate's image at all, apparently. And 3, I ain't even gonna front. This shit is hilarious, bruh. Preston, I've got no beef with you, no agenda against you. Your content actually played a very vital role in helping me make this video. But you really should have wiped all that shit off the internet eons ago before you got in an internet slap fight with someone as scummy and bummy as Ethan Van Sciver. That's just an L for you, my guy. Back to the Comicsgate Dynamite deal. The beginning of the end would start in July of 2020 when Cecil would finally get his own Dynamite crowdfunded cover drawn by Donald DeLay. I'm not sure if it was the titties or Cecil just being that disgusting to look at, but the SJWs on Twitter, as well as much of the talent at Dynamite, could no longer abide by the deal Dynamite and Comicsgate had together. It didn't take much pressure for Nick Barucci to crack and issue a public apology announcing that Dynamite's collaborative efforts with Comicsgate would come to an end. It was then that Ethan realized that if this was all it took for a company like Dynamite to not even do collaborative covers with Comicsgate, then CG ever achieving any real mainstream reach outside of its niche was just a fantasy. This fantasy was why he tried to keep CG as politically neutral as possible, and the main reason he initially wanted the overly pro-MAGA types like Tim Lim, the overly edgy boys like Nurkish, and the overly religious guys like Mike S. Miller to leave Comicsgate in the first place. But it was all for nothing. Who would have guessed that Dynamite, the guys who donated to the Bail Project, which bailed out Antifa and BLM rioters during the 2020 Summer of Love, would be made up of people who didn't approve of Dynamite working with Comicsgate? Who could have seen this coming?
That, EVS had these huge campaigns, and he was talking about the Dynamite thing, like, hey, maybe we can get distribution for a bunch of guys in Comicsgate. So he made it sound real nice. We kind of went along with some of the stuff that he was doing, and then it was just slowly popping up, some of these issues with Dynamite. And we knew they were SJW from the beginning, right? But we were told, hey, he's turned a new leaf, and he's going to let, Comicsgate's going to get in the back door. That's how we're going to get in the mainstream. Slowly over the years, we found out this was not true. All these contracts EVS had with Dynamite, a bunch of them, like the first one, that frog coin stuff ended up being fraudulent, and they had to refund it.
Oh, literally everyone. Literally everyone in Comicsgate except Ethan could have seen this coming. But the headaches from the Dynamite deal didn't end there. Another person who was part of the Dynamite Comicsgate deal was Anna Mello, aka That Star Wars Girl. She was kind of like Nurkish or your boy Zach, where she wasn't really Comicsgate, just Comicsgate adjacent. And that was fine with EVS, because all he was trying to do was get her those big old numbers in her subscriber count. She was also part of the Fandom Menace, a collective of disgruntled Star Wars fans, something Ethan was famous for being himself when he first joined Comicsgate, but that part of his identity had lost some relevancy by 2020. Through the Fandom Menace, Ethan could gain access to a new audience, new viewers, and possibly new backers for his campaigns, which he needed because his mismanagement and late fulfillment with his previous campaigns was bleeding him of some of his previous backers. Now make no mistake, the Comicsgate Fandom Menace connection was also beneficial to Anna, with her getting to do a Vampirella cover for Dynamite being one of the perks. But then Caesar's Praetorian Guard got up to their usual shenanigans and started going in on That Star Wars Girl and her cover for Vampirella. This drama was actually a continuation of an earlier tension between Ro Kabir and Anna concerning Anna's sister, who went missing while driving alone one night. While Anna and her friends and family were worried sick and had authorities out looking for her, Ro, being Ro, made a few inappropriate jokes about the situation. These jokes aged like fucking milk after Anna's sister was discovered having died in a car accident. Anna, understandably, wasn't the biggest fan of Ro after this. Rather than just apologize or, I don't know, leave the lady mourning her dead sister that you made jokes about alone from that point onward, Ro and the rest of War Campaign would start trolling Anna about her Vampirella cover just a year later under the hashtag Thoughtgate. Not only because they didn't think it was a good cover, but because they didn't like the idea of an outsider like Anna getting treated like a Comicsgate princess and stealing the opportunity from an actual member of Comicsgate. And this would be the straw that finally broke the camel's back for Ethan tolerating War Campaign. It was one thing when they were going after people Ethan wanted them to, or was just indifferent about. But now they were going after people like John Malin, Cecil, some of the guys at Geeks and Gamers, even Kyle Ritter. The Kyle Ritter who's not only Ethan's colorist for Cyberfrog, but is also the dude who colored the cover for Vestige, a crowdfunded comic launched by War Campaign. These niggas just did not believe in the concept of friendly fire, and that Star Wars girl and the rest of the Fandom Menace crew was where Ethan had to draw his line in the sand. It took him a lot longer than guys like Mike S. Miller and Doug TeNapel, but Ethan finally realized that War Campaign was bad for business, and effectively excommunicated Ro Kabir and his legionary brethren. What's crazy is that all of this, all these pros leaving CG, the Ribbit coin scandal, CG being blacklisted by Dynamite and the rest of the industry, War Campaign being disavowed by Ethan Van Sciver, is all stuff that just snowballed from the Comicsgate Dynamite collab in the first place. Just one drama arc right after another. Granted, a lot of it, especially the stuff involving War Campaign, probably would have happened regardless. But did it all have to happen in 1 year? And if all this drama wasn't enough, there was one final bombshell dropped on Comicsgate just before 2020 wrapped up. In December, the Meyer v. Wade lawsuit was dismissed without prejudice. Richard C. Meyer dropped his lawsuit against Mark Waid. Ya boy, Comicsgate's boy, couldn't even make it to 2021 before he threw up that white flag. Brother should have took Doug Ernst's advice when he had the chance. In the end, Mark Waid successfully got away with gatekeeping Meyer out of the retail market. While it might not seem like that big of a deal because it did inadvertently net Meyer a bigger bag in the long run, this was a psychological blow to the CG psyche that not even 10,000 Israeli pagers could match. I was only partially joking when I likened your boy Zach to Comicsgate Moses earlier. He's almost like a folkloric hero of sorts to the CG community. His battle against Mark Waid being the last remaining relic of Comicsgate's original consumer revolt identity. So Meyer dropping the lawsuit, throwing in the towel against one of the biggest and most notorious SJW comic industry bullies who hated Comicsgate, was the equivalent to Moses stopping at the Red Sea just as it was parting and then taking his ass back to Egypt because he didn't want to walk that far. This event dealt a permanent blow to Comicsgate's morale. But it doesn't matter. None of this goofy 2019-2020 bullshit I just told you matters. Cause in the middle of all of it, Ethan, in March 2020, finally launched his campaign for Cyberfrog 2 Wreck Planet. And not only would he meet his funding goal within 24 hours, he would land in the upper six figures by the campaign's end, crushing Cyberfrog Bloodhoney's funding and silencing all his haters. The king of Comicsgate had done it again. All he had to do now was ship it out and start getting it into backers' hands by May of 2021. Just a little over a year. Here's the thing. Ethan hadn't finished the book yet when he launched the campaign. Not that this is unusual for Comicsgate. Almost all of them launched their campaigns while they were still in the process of completing the book. The money that they would need for fulfilling and finishing it coming from the backers. But this, combined with the overly lax attitude from CG creators about meeting any type of deadline, was what caused their books being late and still unfinished when the fulfillment date reared its head to be the rule rather than the exception. This was a far cry from Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, who always either had their books done or almost done before their campaigns went up. This is why Tim and Mark have only been late once when delivering their books, and the one time they were late had nothing to do with their books not being finished.
But Iconic seems to have kind of figured that problem out. You're late essentially on nothing. I think the one time you were late before Iconic, it might have been by like three weeks.
It was by a month. And it was not,
it was 4.
Yeah, and it was not because the book was late. It was because we were waiting on patches to arrive.
With the exception of Ethan and a few of CG's top dogs, funding was down for CG books all across the board from 2020 onward. And the biggest reason wasn't War Campaign or any drama. It was just that so many of their expensive ass books were constantly late. You want Comicsgate to be a brand instead of a hashtag? Fine. You want it to be a business instead of a movement? Fine. Good businesses deliver their products and services to customers on time. Something that the Iconic crew manages while still working day jobs. Tim Lim was drawing Common America while working a full shift, and unlike Ethan, who literally has all day to fucking draw, managed to get his books out on time. You would think, with how much Ethan bungled Bloodhoney, being 13 months behind schedule, that he would make sure that would never happen again. That he would finish and deliver Cyberfrog 2 Wreck Planet in a timely manner. You would be wrong, because Ethan would keep his backers waiting until 2023.
I beg your pardon?
I beg your pardon?
How the fuck is that even possible, Ethan? Making Cyberfrog is the only thing you have to do. You're a self-employed millionaire with a single project you have to work on, bro. Why the fuck is it taking him most of the Biden administration to finish his Frog comic? Well, that's easy. He's too busy going to ball games. He's too busy going to concert. He's too busy shitposting on Twitter. He's too busy doing daily 80-hour live streams. He's too busy playing with his shitty Ninja Turtle ripoff toys. He's too busy doing a whole lot of not working. EVS was always a slow worker, even when he was in the industry. But now that he doesn't have any deadline to meet that he's not imposing upon himself, oh, that's a wrap for any inkling of a work ethic that Ethan Van Sciver ever had. EVS just isn't built like the workhorses at Iconic Comics, who would never keep their customers waiting 3 fucking years for a single book. Now, while there are plenty of examples I can give of people who did get their books out on time, some even from within CG, there's one guy in particular who not only got his books out on time, he got this arcane art of punctual delivery down to a science and took over the whole indie comic game just like everyone thought Comicsgate was going to. Eric July, also known as Young Ripper 59, is a libertarian slash former track star slash rapper slash metal band lead vocalist slash anti-SJW slash talking head pundit for The Blaze slash geek culture enthusiast, with his latest career ambition revolving around one of his oldest loves, American comics. He'd even make a podcast for it in 2019 called For Canon's Sake, where he would specifically offer commentary on comic books, the industry, and how SJWs were destroying classic heroes like ISIS did ancient artifacts. As Eric's following grew, he started brushing shoulders with other influencers from geek culture communities, the Fandom Menace, Geeks and Gamers, and of course, Comicsgate. All this fraternizing wasn't just for networking or making content either. Ripper was gathering data, stacking up his research while he worked on a project that would shake the whole YouTube comic creator game up. Like early CG, Young Ripper understood that the quickest way to change the culture was to become the culture. So he decided he would throw his taxationist theft hat into the ring and announce his own comic on July 11th, 2022. Awesome. But wait, he wasn't just announcing a single comic. No, this was the beginning to an entire comic universe. This public road hating ass nigga Eric July,
you fucking level 1 rookie bitch ass commentators on Twitter, you not fooling a libertarian by bringing up them bitch ass roads,
came out here more ambitious than any other indie comic YouTuber yet. But all that ambition was met with pre-orders out the ass. Eric July had never published a comic in his life, and he still ended up doing over $1 million in sales. It would go beyond, surpassing even the 1.2 million Cyberfraud 2 Ret Planet earned. Within only 4 days, Isom would earn $1.7 million. And this ain't that big of a deal, really. I mean, yeah, he made a lot of money off one comic, but a lot of dudes we've talked about so far have done that. Eric doing this with zero experience in the creation of or selling of comics is impressive, but it's still just one of several indie comic YouTuber success stories. At least that's what it should have been. But Eric July's success attracted some envious ass motherfuckers. Some were from the industry, some were SJWs who saw Ripper as no different than Comicsgate, but the worst guys who came gunning for Eric July's neck were 2 LA degenerate podcasters in their autistic fan base whose trolling campaigns against Eric for the next 2 years would range from amusingly annoying to openly malicious A-logging. I'll be straight up with you guys, there is no way for me to fit all this Dick Masterson lore into this video. I already had to trim a lot of fat when talking about Comicsgate proper. This motherfucker? Nah, I ain't got time for that. Which is fine, because Dick's gonna be splitting the spotlight here with his partner, Vito Gesualdi. Vito is Dick's co-host on their podcast, The Biggest Problem in the Universe, a continuation of a podcast Dick originally co-hosted with a guy called Maddox. Again, we got a lot to get through here, so I'm gonna be abridging a lot of this dickhead lore. Oh, dickhead is what Dick Masterson fans call themselves? I wasn't insulting Vito just now. Anyway, Vito Gesualdi is an obese, talentless clout chaser. There's also a lot of talk of him being a pedophile. Now, I'm not calling Vito a pedo just for making a few diddler jokes. I will say, if you run with a bit about being a pedophile, and you keep confessing for your love of cuties, and you go on streams to argue in defense of non-offending pedophiles and maps, and when talking about pedophiles you accidentally slip up and say we, which was totally just the royal we and not a Freudian slip, you can't blame people for going,
that's not proof. It's still debatable, but it's a good piece of evidence.
I'm just saying, bro, if I keep making jokes about beating my girl, I can't get upset when people start checking her for bruises when we go out together. But nah, it is actually impossible to definitively prove that Vito Gesualdi is a pedophile. Proving that he's an obese, talentless clout chaser though? Oh, that's easy. See, Vito isn't just failed LA comedian number 87,000, whose greatest accomplishments in the over a decade since he moved to LA being branding himself as an ironic pedophile as a joke and becoming the co-host and butt monkey to Dick Masterson. No, he's also an aspiring comic creator, cause who fucking isn't at this point? Despite his own book not even being launched yet, Vito was real bothered about the fact that Eric had managed to make so much money, not because of any talent he had as a writer, but solely because he was pandering to a big anti-woke audience.
What the heck? You're fighting with Eric July all the time. That's racist, Vito. You're racist. You can't fight with a black man. Apologize right now and give us reparations.
I'm not fighting with Eric July. I love Eric July. He's a great creator.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, Eric July put out this comic book that has
very successful, multi-millions.
Yeah, a lot of people bought into the idea that, oh, if I buy a comic, I can own the libs, and unfortunately ended up with one of the worst superhero comics that's ever been published. I really feel bad for the people who have fallen for his grift.
Oh, come on, Vito. Grift, what are you trying to do? You're on YouTube trying to make money.
Bad book.
No, but I mean, listen.
Bad book.
This explanation is bullshit. Vito was just jealous as hell of Eric. Like, that's literally all it was. Tons of people before Eric July, both in and out of Comicsgate, made money selling their books to anti-woke crowds. You really think the streets were starving for not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or not G.I. Joe? Or were they fans of Ethan Van Sciver and Richard C. Meyer and wanted to support their boys and stick it to the SJWs?
Well, the way I look at it is like, you know, you're buying into a brand. So it's not like people care about the comics, because all these comics are crap.
Yeah.
You're
Except for
buying
mine.
into the, I'm a Comicsgate guy and I'm buying a Comicsgate comic. So it's not even really the comic that you want. Like, that's why I don't understand some people that get upset. It's like, you know, you're not buying the comic.
Vito was just bitter that this retarded libertarian black dude who wasn't an actual writer like him became a millionaire overnight. It was pure envy and salt and would start a mostly one-sided feud between young Ripper and the dickheads. I want you to keep in mind as we go forward that everything I'm about to tell you only happened because Vito Gesualdi was jealous of a successful black man. Vito was going to stay the course with his smarmy, passive-aggressive tactics. These tactics would result in his and Eric's first direct interaction on Eric's podcast For Canon's Sake in August of 2022. But what you have to understand about Vito is, despite being a comedic writer, he lacks a lot of originality and creativity. This plan of Vito's to get on Eric's podcast and subtly troll him about his mid-comic while plugging his own podcasting comic was an idea that Vito copied from his co-host Dick, who years ago managed to troll his way onto the Dr. Phil show, also he could shill his book Why Men Are Better Than Women on daytime television. Unfortunately for Vito, young Ripper, who was a veteran of the southern rap game, knew a clout goblin when he heard one. So he was like,
stupid, I'm not gonna let you get the chance.
And thwarted this spaghetti meatball shaped Italian by muting him every time he tried to shill.
I think it's
Well, I
not.
would say this. Sorry, yeah. And real quick, just so you know, I'm driving, so if I cut in and out, I'm sorry. I'm actually on the way to do my own podcast. I guess what I want to say is,
So if there's something that you want to do or you think that you should, that this is the way that it should be done, I encourage you to go ahead and do that. But like,
well, I'm glad you bring that up because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm currently working on a comic book called you can view at Super. Book with a great story. quagmire that has been driven into the ground.
Sorry, pimp. No free advertising on this platform.
All right, God bless Eric. I look forward to fighting with you on Twitter some more.
That won't happen, but yep, peace out. As a creative, and this is my advice to you guys that are out there, don't be that guy, right? Because he's coming from a complete point of jealousy. Hey, I have a problem with people being enthusiastic. It seems like they're enthusiastic for this reason as opposed to this reason, which is what they should be if it was like, just as advice to you guys who are fellow creatives. That's an example of how not to be. You don't see someone's success and then get sour because they are seeing that success.
After accurately deducing that Vito was an envious clout chaser, Eric didn't acknowledge him. He didn't tweet at him, didn't mention him in any videos or streams. Vito's plans to drum up attention for his own comic, Super Killer, before launching the campaign for it in May 1st, ultimately came to nothing. Still, the modest $10,000 goal he set for it was crossed in under 3 days, so Vito got his comic funded in the end. Good for him. And this is really where this little arc should have ended. But later that month, on May 20th, on Rekieta Law, a woman called Nina Infinity got into a little back and forth with Dick Masterson.
But it is though. Eric July's building, that's the whole message, is he's selling an alternative economy, right?
Yeah, but his comic sucks.
Does it? Have you read it?
I haven't read it. No, I'm not. I'm just accepting the premise that if it
No,
does,
I'm asking
Dick.
Dick, have you read the comic book?
I looked at it.
So you didn't read it, but
That's
you
all
think
that
it
matters.
sucks?
Because everything I've seen about Eric July's comic leads me to believe that it's trash and that it's not written well.
But you would have to read it. That's what, if you're
Literally,
gonna,
no. I could just listen. No one has said anything good about it.
Dick was talking about how Isom was bad despite having not read it because people kept telling him it was bad. And I'm 100% sure that 80% of those people were just Vito. Now Nina, thinking this line of reasoning was retarded, told Dick,
maybe you should read it for yourself. And
I've heard
find
good
out.
things about
Do
it.
you really want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read it and then
Why
give you a
not?
proper review.
And Dick took her up on that challenge. Let's be crystal clear here. Unlike his co-host, Dick does not care about comics. Despite Vito's constant seething over Eric July's success, Young Ripper was not on Dick's radar. He didn't even tweet about Eric or Isom until that summer. And his review of Isom honestly isn't important, so we're just gonna skip that part for 2 reasons. 1, I've gone this whole video without really talking about the quality of any of these comics because it really doesn't matter. Cyberfrog might be a masterpiece worthy of the Louvre, and Isom might be so bad that even a Haitian would need it. But it doesn't matter because this video is about the people making these comics. It's not about comics. You know how Comicsgate isn't actually about comics. 2, there is not a single timeline where Dax Herrera would have given Isom a truly unbiased review. Not when Vito's successful black men turned me into Sinestro Gesualdi was in his ear yapping to Dick about Eric July's crimes to humanity for a full year before this. Yeah, he made a bunch of extensive notes about Isom 1, but the purpose of reviewing Isom wasn't to provide a serious comic review. It was to poke fun at a bigger content creator for content. And I'm definitely not gonna hate on Dick for shit that I'm guilty of. Eric and Dick would eventually have their first direct interaction on the stream of Yellow Flash, a CG'er from the early days of Comicsgate, and they would get a little heated with each other.
Eric, what are you doing, man? Why are you this sensitive to simple criticism? Even coming from Ethan, who's an industry veteran, dude. It comes off as so childish and insecure. You know that, right?
I disagree. I think you're dramatizing what's happening, but I'm cool with that. Am I a competitor? Yes. I have 3 principles
Not
with
according
the
to your
Riververse.
book, you're not. You're hung up with small
See now
details
I'm hung
that
up.
I would
So you
change.
mentioned something that you say.
No.
And
I
now I'm getting
support
hung
that,
up.
but it's
All
just
right,
not
that's cool.
important. I
All
support
right,
that
man.
it's just a waste of everybody's time.
That's fine.
Isom
That's
comes
cool,
in
man.
and says,
you get this critical error wrong
what are you talking
multiple
about?
times.
What are you
Multiple
talking
times.
about?
He goes through the internal
Right here.
dialogue of him not being able to fly. You just tried to let.
Eric,
We
I
need to
didn't say
rewind
he could
that.
Fly, you stupid fuck. Flash
You just
said that.
went through. No,
Flash
you just
said he could fly. I
All
said
right,
he
so
could
you
fly.
just-
Okay, can we all agree that everybody's
He's
just
your
buying
bro.
Eric's book to have it and they're not actually reading it while he's gone? Can we all?
Hey, I read it. I read it twice.
Ultimately, they seem to come to a somewhat amicable understanding.
Eric, I apologize for calling you a scammer. I don't think you're running a scam. I want the parallel economy, but whatever, to get better. I want your thing's already a success. It doesn't matter what I say. It's already a success. That's it. I'm sorry I said a bunch of mean shit. You said a bunch of mean shit too. But that's just my piece. All right?
All right.
But the real shit show was just about to start. We had to go over this first. I had to lay this all out for you because there's this narrative the dickhead community has been trying to push that the primary reason Rippa and his community has such a problem with them is because they made fun of Isom. This shit doesn't even make sense because a bunch of people had already done exactly that for the past 8 months Isom had been out before Dick ever read it. Dick was actually super late to the Isom is mid party. No, Dax, your poo-pooing on Eric's comic is not the reason why he doesn't fuck with you. It was literally everything that happened after that. The Dick Masterson community isn't very big, but it is very passionate. They really love them some Dick. And they're all insane, obviously. They're fans of Dick Masterson in 2024, host Zipspiracy, host making Vito his co-host. They have to be crazy. Now there's this one guy, Riley, who really stands out among the pack. He's Dick's producer, but he's also got a side hustle, doing piss pornography with his autistic, saggy titty, furry porn drawing girlfriend, Mint Salad. Again, I'm not insulting anyone. Mint Salad literally calls herself Autistic Boobs on Twitter. Aside from being Dick's producer, Riley's also one of Dick's most zealous flying monkeys, a real Dick writer, just down for absolutely anything. And when he saw Dick going at young Rippa, you know he had to jump in and help his big bro break that buck. But regular trolling wasn't gonna be enough for the piss porn prince. Nah, he had to take it up a notch. He created a parody character of Young Rippa 59, branding himself Young Clippa 69. He only had one mission, becoming Eric July's ultimate nightmare, his biggest menace, his greatest op. But Riley ran into a snag as early as August 2023 because Eric's soft, fake libertarian punk ass, unable to handle the fire that Young Clippa was spitting, nuked Riley's Twitter from orbit and false struck his parody store on Teespring down. That's right.
That's right! That's right! That's right!
Eric July is a flaming flagging. But this flaggotry would be his undoing, because the way the DMCA process works, Eric ended up accidentally doxing his own business address to Riley. Young Clipper wasn't gonna let himself get punked. He was gonna get at them cheeks. Now some of you might be wondering, Mikey, how could Eric DMCA Riley's Teespring store or his Twitter? How could he DMCA Riley for parody at all? Shouldn't everyone who does parodies be getting struck down all the time then? Your confusion is understandable and easily answerable. None of this happened. It's all a lie. At least the way it was told by Dick and his Dick writers was a lie. Riley's Twitter going down had nothing to do with Eric July. It went down because he broke Twitter's terms of service. Ripper also wasn't the one who took down Riley's Teespring store. Teespring took down Riley's Teespring store after it was brought to their attention that Riley was infringing the shit out of the Rippaverse trademark, which Teespring doesn't allow, so they shut it down. Something to keep in mind is that there were a few people who actually did get DMCA'd by Rippaverse Publishing, and those people could always show receipts, including the business address someone posted on Twitter, which is how Riley actually got it. Despite him and Mint Salad and Dick and Vito and all the rest of their tribe claiming that Eric was responsible for taking Riley out and giving out his business address to him, no receipts that any of that shit actually happened has been shared. But hey, whatever, who cares about receipts? Yugoslavia collapsed because a freaky nigga in Serbia lied about Albanians breaking a bottle off in his ass, when it was really just a solo prostrate stimulation session gone awry. A little lie can go a long way, and this lie would serve as the catalyst for the dickhead community to galvanize against Eric July in earnest. The first major homosexual operation by Dick and his community would involve a children's charity, Comic Books for Kids. Dick had learned that Eric had an offer on his website that allowed fans to purchase an Isom comic as a discounted price that would then be donated to this organization. Dick, like the massive Karen he is, contacted this charity because Eric July was apparently committing charity fraud.
Here, like if you have a comic book, right?
Sure.
Super Killer.
Super Killer.
So you can get a charity copy for Super Killer at $12.50 at cost, and then I'm gonna give this to a comic book. A guy that gives comic books to kids with cancer.
Sick kids, wow.
Sick kids with cancer.
Are gonna get a comic book if you give me $12.50.
Yeah, and then everyone said, "Oh man, that's awesome. Here's a bunch of."
I don't want sick kids to not have comic books.
Send 10 kids a copy of your "I love everything that you're doing."
Yeah. Well, what could be a problem with that?
Oh, that's charity fraud.
Oh no! What?
Yeah, that's not charity fraud. Dick is under this weird assumption that just because the donation isn't coming directly out of Eric's pockets personally, and that he's breaking even, that he must be scamming the charity and committing some type of fraud. Ethan Van Sciver did something similar with Cyberfraud Blood Honey. He said he was raising $10,000 for a men's cancer charity with his comic, so he took money for some purchased books, donated the $10K he promised to the cancer charity, then used the rest to print more books. That was also not charity fraud. The fucking charity Rippaverse donated to personally thanked Eric and Rippaverse for their large contributions. Dick was just throwing shit at a wall to see what would stick and get a rise out of Eric. He even straight up admitted to not giving a fuck about the charity at all.
Is there enough
kids.
backstory for comic books for kids?
Okay.
Yeah. And at first I thought maybe I shouldn't talk about this because I don't want to fuck up that guy's deal. The
Right,
comic book
the
charity
charity?
guys.
Sure.
Yeah, but then I thought, fuck it.
Now what's interesting is that when you accuse Dick Masterson of a serious crime, he gets very defensive and threatens to sue for defamation. Dick can apparently dish it out, but he can't take it that well. I want you to keep that in mind for later. While the scamming a charity narrative that Dick, Vito, and their fans kept pushing was annoying, it was just internet babble. Some trolls trying to get a reaction. Rip had dealt with that before. What he hadn't dealt with was the level of A-logging that the dickheads were planning to carry out. Specifically, that Riley was. After getting his business location from someone who actually did get DMCA'd by Rippaverse Publishing, he decided to pay a visit to Eric's property, his warehouse, vandalize it by taping dollar bills on the glass, and then issuing schizo-ass threats to Eric on Twitter. Now, do I believe that Riley is a threat to anyone but himself? No, not really. But if I was a nigga running a brand new $1 million company and some autistic internet creature was creeping around my property and antagonizing me while his receding hairline boss and obese co-host were making memes about it, slandering the fuck out of my business and accusing me of federal crimes, I'd be a little upset, just a little bit. The most annoying thing about Dick and his community is that they act like Eric July is some irrational spastic lolcow when he's really a perfectly reasonable black man who doesn't appreciate a bunch of LA weirdos fucking with his livelihood for no reason. Riley's shenanigans would eventually get him arrested, to Dick's annoyance, but he would get released. His initial buck-breaking expedition in Texas didn't amount to much. But just when Eric thought he could relax, the dickheads threw a new insane attack at him. This new major gay op didn't come from Dick, Vito, or even Riley, but from a random fan called an obtuse gnome who contacted the International School of Ministry, also known as ISOM, and told them that Eric July was infringing on their trademark. Some say that this wasn't actually a random fan who contacted the ministry, that it was actually just Vito, and that obtuse gnome is just a sock account of his.
A bunch of people on the internet are lying about me. So the claim is that this is a sock puppet account that we set up specifically to harass people. Here I've been able to pull up tweets going all the way back to 2016, 2017. He was in hundreds of conversations over the past 7 years.
Okay, and you've been on Twitter since 2010, Vito. What does this disprove? Also, it's interesting that you were the guy who got the DM first instead of Dick. While there's no way to prove that Dick or Vito had anything to do with contacting the ministry themselves, goddamn if they didn't enjoy every second of what happened next. That is that the International School of Ministry served Rippaverse Publishing for trademark infringement. I feel it's worth pointing out that the International School of Ministry was not only not the only organization to use the name ISOM before Rippaverse did, it wasn't the only ministry in the United States that used the name ISOM. We have the Indiana School of Ministry, the Illinois School of Ministry, and the Iowa School of Ministry, all of which use the acronym ISOM. So the International School of Ministry didn't care to enforce anything with these other ministries, but it did with a comic book? Maybe that comic making almost $2 million also has something to do with the lawsuit. And if all that wasn't enough, while all this was transpiring, Riley was still out in the field being a menace. And in his next attempt to get at young Rippa's gold, he would go to the tombstone of Eric's great-grandfather, whose ISOM's protagonist was named after, and piss on it. Now, this didn't actually happen because another dickhead beat Riley to it first and posted a fucking selfie. Just a reminder, all of this happened because Vito Gesualdi was jealous of a successful black man. Now, Dick's community, especially Vito, found this shit hilarious. The non-degenerates didn't find this shit so funny.
I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the more difficult videos that I've had to record. The reason I'm doing it is because I just want folks that maybe missed this to just understand what type of individuals it is that I'm dealing with and how jacked up they really are. One of these detractors went to my great-great-great-grandfather's grave and put stuff on it and took a picture of it because haha, it's just fun, it's giggles and all that good stuff.
As for EVS, while he didn't approve of what the dickheads were doing, he didn't condemn any of it either, and was still on friendly terms with Dick and Vito. This didn't sit right with Ripper, who thought it was kinda messed up that Ethan could be so friendly with dudes who literally said that they wanted to harm Eric's business.
Were you trying to ruin Eric's business?
With the charity, no.
Are you trying to ruin Eric's business now?
Yeah. I don't think anyone should buy Eric's comics.
Eric expressed these frustrations via DMs to EVS. Unfortunately for Eric, he didn't account for one thing: Ethan Van Sciver pulling an Ethan Van Sciver. In October of 2023, just a little while after the Tombstone selfie incident, Ethan dropped some DMs exchanged between him and Eric July that he framed as a threat, like they were Taliban night letters or something.
So I got a text saying someone's dropping private tweets on Twitter from me. What? Oh, okay, let's go through this real quick. Okay, so Ethan has posted a DM to me. He says, this is me, and this is what it is that I said. I said, I'm going to be 100 with you and not be public with it. You're going out of your way to play middle of the road publicly with a dude that is going out of his way to work overtime to publicly defame is whack. It's even weaker that you lay credence to their narrative. I treat you like I do anybody else in this space, and I do not use my platform to amplify narratives that go against others I'm cool with. Everybody I do shows and streams knows not to bring up any gripes with people I'm cool with, as I will not give it the time of day. I'm going to start reciprocating on that. If you want to chat about it, you're free to call. What the fuck? And now he's in the chat. He says, let's be honest about it. You're trying to, what are you talking about, Ethan? Trying to silence you. What are you talking about? How is this trying to silence? You are a grown man with your own platform. How on earth can I silence you? What are you talking about, homie? It's a personal tip, bro. We supposed to be cool. I can't talk to you in private, clearly, because maybe that, obviously to you, we weren't cool like that. We talked about it on the phone. There was nothing. We got an understanding, and now it's all I'm gonna put his DMs on black. What the fuck? I ain't done nothing to you, bro. What was the point of this?
Ripper was completely blindsided that Ethan would do something like this, because he wasn't paying attention, because he never watched any of shitty webcomics videos about Comicsgate, probably because their old channel, with tons of videos exposing EVS and CG, got flagged down. Anyone who had been paying attention to the shenanigans of Ethan Van Sciver over the years knew this play was perfectly in character for the Frog King. Ethan even did a little skit with Riley when he suddenly popped over at his warehouse to show how much of a pansy Eric had been. But you see, Uncle Ethan was confused. He thought this signature move of his would work just like it worked with Duck to Naples. But he forgot two things. The first thing he forgot was that he didn't have his dedicated Gay Op Battalion war campaign to go after Eric and perpetuate Ethan's narratives like they usually did. The second thing he forgot was that Eric July was never part of Comicsgate. There wasn't that much crossover between the Comicsgate community and the Young Ripper 59 community, and Eric already had a bigger individual audience than the rest of Comicsgate combined. So any attempt at mobilizing the troops against Ripper were pretty goddamn ineffectual, because Ripper had a much larger audience that Ethan couldn't overwhelm or subvert. Do you remember earlier when I pointed out that Kimetsu no Yaiba, oh I'm a weeb by the way in case you didn't know, outsold the entire American comic book industry by itself in 2020? Yeah, that's basically the dynamic between Eric July and Ethan Van Sciver. As far as audience sizes go, they're in completely different weight classes. So Ethan and the rest of Comicsgate burning that bridge with Young Ripper was the equivalent to Staten Island burning the bridge that connected it to the rest of New York City. Okay, you guys needed that bridge a lot more than he did, and so the Rippa Comet-Skate War began. Now when I say war, I mean less Ukraine versus Russia or Israel versus the rest of the Middle East, and more South Korea versus North Korea. One side is mostly preoccupied with being wealthy, prosperous, and minding its own fucking business, and the other side is preoccupied with being the pettiest niggas on earth, while their former wealth and prosperity from years prior gradually dries up. Ethan essentially turned this feud with Eric into his new content farm, with many of his CG minions following after his lead, both to please his CG majesty and also to try and get at some of that super chat greenery for themselves, because Comicsgate is undeniably more about streaming than it is about making comics at this point. Even if you are someone in CG whose primary focus is making books, if you ain't CG royalty, you probably ain't doing any of those big numbers Comicsgate campaigns were doing back in 2017 to 2020. The days of milk and honey in Comicsgate are over. We're on that trickle-down economics type shit now. While Eric has given a lot of his haters a few jabs here and there, he's mostly stayed above it and focused on prospering, putting out more books, and building his brand. And this attitude of ignore stupid shit and focus on your business proved to be the best strategy Eric could have possibly gone with, because somehow, by just doing nothing, he gradually racked up W's against his enemies. The first major one was when the Isom lawsuit, the lawsuit Dick, Vito, and their fans swore up and down was gonna take Eric July to the cleaners, was abruptly dropped a few days before Christmas of 2023, with Rippaverse and the International School of Ministry coming to a mutual amicable understanding. Now the biggest W Eric July would score by doing nothing was when Young Clipper tried to get the drop on him one last time. He pulled up to a Rippaverse fan meetup, raising a ruckus outside and pop-quizzing Rippaverse fans?
We're here with Alex Stein playing a round of What's Your Favorite Part of Isom, everybody's favorite Dallas comic book. I have copies here and you will win one of your choice if you tell me what your favorite part is.
My favorite part is there's a part where there's a truck that looks like an F-250 and I love Ford trucks, so...
That's the best answer yet.
Was Riley a danger to anyone there? No? But he was disturbing an event he wasn't welcome at. And most importantly, Riley had a warrant out for his arrest for stalking. So once again, 12 got called. Once again, Riley got arrested. And once again, Dick was left seething, lashing out at random people who attended the meetup as if they had anything to do with it. As if Dick wasn't egging Riley on the whole time. Nigga, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? Regular ass people don't want to play these goofy internet games in real life. When some autistic gremlin like Riley is menacing the general public, the police get called and the gremlin in question is either shooed away or arrested. Somehow, these obvious consequences never occurred to Dick. And I gotta remind you one last time that this all happened because Vito Gesualdi was jealous of a successful black man. You remember when Comicsgate was a consumer movement? When it was a hashtag that represented the discontent of tons of comic book readers? You don't? Well, don't sweat it. The jabronis that make up modern Comicsgate don't remember either, because the community just keeps collapsing, with the duo leading this death march being none other than Ethan Van Sciver and Richard C. Meyer, the dudes who spearheaded monetizing Comicsgate's hashtag and turning the movement into a brand. Now, how are these fine gentlemen holding up as we near the 2024 holiday season? So recently, Ethan had a really bad drunk stream. Our mans was tore up from the floor up.
Hey, it's me. I am at ChillerCon, and I am effed up.
And in this drunken stupor, he started to lament just how much of a nobody and has-been he had become.
I've had a lot of drinks. People are buying me drinks, they're giving me drinks. Came out to the bar, some people recognize me. I'm nobody. I used to be somebody, but I'm nobody now. Even still, some people recognize me.
Also, word on the street is that Ethan was hitting that freebase with some homeless lesbians in a parking lot. Okay, so it probably wasn't a hard drug. It was most likely just weed. But still, for the leader of Comicsgate who's been crusading hard against another comic creator on YouTube, it was a heinous look. So heinous that the Frog King deleted the stream almost immediately. But sorry pimp, we already archived that bitch. And after being dragged up and down the internet streets by all his ops, including Eric July, he made this weak-ass post about his wife and how awful her health had been getting. Look, Ethan, that's tragic and all, and I sincerely hope the best for your wife. But why are you telling us this? Is it because you're getting that frog bussy blown out because you made an ass out of yourself on stream and now you're fishing for sympathy points to get some heat off you? Very disgraceful showing from the king of Comicsgate. But Comicsgate's Moses isn't that far behind him in this lolcow Grand Prix because Richard Meyer has decided to burn his channel to the ground. Why? Well, more charitable actors would say his mind's been rattled ever since the suicide of Ed Piscor. A suicide that Meyer and many others pin on the malicious slander and witch hunting from vindictive SJWs in the industry. Now, those of us who don't give a fuck about charity and have been paying attention to Richard's behavior for a while know that the real reason is because people didn't like Furiosa. No, I'm not joking. Furiosa bombing is what caused Zack to crash out, because Meyer is convinced that Furiosa floundered primarily because anti-woke pop culture influencers like The Quartering, Critical Drinker, and Nerdrotic kept shitting on it for being a woke girl boss flick. Now, they didn't. This didn't happen. They just said that general audiences might assume that based on the marketing for the movie. Some of them even said Furiosa was good.
No, what's really got Hollywood and the corporate media analyst panties in a bunch is Furiosa is a well-received film from critics and the audience. And after watching Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, I would have to agree with some of that. It wasn't a bad film.
But your boy wasn't trying to hear all that. In his heart, he knew that his beloved generic summer blockbuster B movie flopped because of these birthday party clowns. Yes, that's literally what he calls pop culture YouTubers he doesn't like. Slandering Furiosa right out of the gate. So Meyer put on his Batman cowl and decided to dedicate his channel to whooping some birthday party clown ass. Because how dare these middle-aged men criticize media that they aren't even the target audience of? Now, those of you who are familiar with your boy Zach's content might be wondering, but Mikey, isn't your boy Zach also a middle-aged man who spent the better part of a decade criticizing media he wasn't the target audience of? Yes, and that's what makes this crash out session so entertaining, because Meyer has literally zero self-awareness that he's the thing he's labeling everyone else as, and bleeding subscribers on the daily while he's doing it. He spent the last 8 years pandering to anti-SJW and anti-woke audiences. Shit, he still can't keep Heather Antos's and Max Visagios' names out of his mouth, but bro just can't seem to put 2 and 2 together. For years, Richard kept his head low from the strays of all this Comicsgate drama, but he's ironically become the most mind-broken of them all, and now, just like in the good old days of early CG, he's right where his buddy EVS is again. Just a pair of old men knee-deep in dumb internet drama who are behind on delivering their books and who are yelling at clouds and nipping at the heels of bigger, younger creators who are more successful than them. Shortly after delivering Rent Planet 3 years late, Ethan would launch in July of 2023 Cyberfrog 3 Red Extermination with an estimated delivery date of it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter!
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter!
Ethan is not getting this book out on time. He's just not gonna do it. And I don't need to use my super Negrodamus clairvoyant powers to determine that. Cyberfrog Red Extermination is due this December, but it might as well be December of 2026. The fate of Comicsgate is way more tragic than Gamergate's. Gamergate's relatively swift death was more of a blessing than a curse because the dishonor the grifters could inflict upon GG were short-lived. Comicsgate didn't get the mercy of a quick death. The story of CG is almost like a 7-year humiliation ritual, with not only the principles and beliefs of the movement being bastardized by grifters who showed up right out of the gate, but also the grifters themselves gradually evolving into lolcows.
These pros already have somewhat of egos when they come into this thing. You know, they think they're hot shit. And then so they start making some money and they get a little bit of a fan following on YouTube, and it does something to their brain. They stop thinking like normal people, right? They can't think like a normal person anymore. They can only think in this YouTube kind of mindset. And I think it really genuinely fucking corrupts people who might have been good or maybe not as bad as what they are now.
Lolcows who casually abuse the crowdfunding system and their backers' trust. That, along with the failure to deliver their products on time or sometimes even at all, the non-existent customer service, and the prevalence of endless drama directed at people inside and outside of the community, all contributed to Comicsgate becoming the current disgrace it is. And of course, Ethan Van Sciver was always at the center of it. He and his fans can say otherwise, but once War Campaign became a thing and started going after people Ethan disapproved of, like Tim Lim and Nurkish, yeah, that was all she wrote for Comicsgate. Ethan's a good artist, a good showman, and a good salesman, but what he ain't is a good businessman. People were giddy to throw millions of dollars at Comicsgate over the years, but EVS and the rest of the CG tribe just weren't able to properly take advantage of that initial momentum. And now, well, you only have so much time to offer subpar service before superior competition comes rolling in. We are currently in a new era of indie comic creation, and with companies like Rippaverse who came in like titans, or companies like Iconic Comics who show healthy growth every year, you gotta wonder how much longer Comicsgate has before it succumbs to the coming drought. Now, just like any severe drought, the aristocrats at the top will be the last ones to starve. Ethan alone made over $700K off Cyberfrog Red Extermination, so he along with the rest of the Comicsgate royalty will be fine for now. Shit, I wouldn't be surprised if Ethan just ups and abandons the Comicsgate ship if a better opportunity ever arrives. That type of opportunism is basically how he got into Comicsgate anyway. The indie comics team will be fine and continue to develop regardless of how CG is doing. Well, Mikey, you should at least give Comicsgate credit for giving this new era of indies momentum by popularizing the crowdfunding model. No, I fucking shouldn't, because they didn't popularize it. Dudes like Brian Polito were using crowdfunding to make comics long before Comicsgate came around. If anything, CG made things worse by abusing the crowdfunding model in the way they have over the years. There are people who still are afraid to back another comic because they backed the Comicsgate book years ago and either got it super late or just never got it at all.
Go on to any Ethan Van Sciver Indiegogo campaign. It is just complaints up the wazoo. Where's my book? How come I don't have my book? When am I going to get my book? I want a refund. I'm never backing another crowdfund ever again. I've betrayed, blah, blah, blah. It's just, it is nuts. When you have big creators like that, destroying the mindsets of other people. If this guy can't do it, this professional artist who's been in the industry for 30 years, there's no way that guy can do it. If the 30-year pro can't do it, then there's no way that this guy can do it.
When #Comicsgate first started in 2017, it was about changing the culture of comics, and ultimately, it succeeded. The big two haven't changed much, but we do live in a very different era of comics than we did almost a decade ago. Sucks that the Comicsgate movement slowly killed itself over the years in the process. Hey, hold up. Where you going? And I haven't forgotten about Dick and Vito. Look, Vito, it's one thing for Dick and Riley to troll Eric July, but you're not just a troll in this. You're a creator too. You threw your hat in the ring, bro. And it's a really bad look for you to have been talking all this bull about how terrible Eric July is as a comic writer and conspiring with Dick to mess with his business, and then be almost a full year late to finish and ship out one 65-page book that you aren't even drawing. You barely make content on your own channels. You don't have a show that's currently in production. You don't even stream that much in your own time like the CG guys do. You're just a lazy bastard. Even lazier somehow than Ethan Van Sciver. See, the situation with Superkiller has gotten very complicated for Vito. He dropped a short black and white preview of the book and also claimed in a September update that the book was mostly finished. In fact, all the inking was done and the color inking wasn't far behind. This was a lie. I expected it to be a lie because A, Vito is technically a Comicsgate guy now, and lying about the non-existent progress on your book is like an essential part of being a Comicsgate guy. And B, because it's Vito and he just lies, like how he says he's pro-free speech, but then, like the little snitch he is, tattletoed on Nerdrotic just because they had Alex Jones on one time.
When Vito attempted to call attention, we'll say, of Team YouTube to Friday Night Tights on Nerdrotic's channel because they had the audacity of having Alex Jones on, and Vito disagreed with what Alex Jones said. No need to trash Vito, man. That's bad optics. Vito is garbage. Vito has been garbage for a long time. He's a piece of shit. I will absolutely trash him.
Or how when Andy Worski was going to box Salt Poppy, he kept sending their boxing promotions super old clips of Andy saying or doing edgy shit to get him kicked off the card.
When I went to my fight to fight Salt Poppy, fucking Vito found an old video of when someone on my show was saying the N-word and I was laughing, and he added KSI,
all
Misfits,
the journalists
all
that were
week.
in London
all week.
And you know, we had journalists come up to us at the event and ask us about this shit.
Vito's a piece of shit.
And
Fuck
they're
him.
like, you guys seem like cool guys. What's all this bullshit? Like, and we're like, well, this is Vito the pedophile. And they're like, oh, we understand.
Vito is just a big fat liar. What I wasn't expecting was the magnitude of this lie. Cause it ain't looking good, Super Killer Bros. I don't think you guys are getting your comic this month, or next month, or next year, because the artist for this book is no longer the artist for this book. Vito, like your typical lazy West Coast liberal, pawned most of the heavy lifting for his book off on some cheap Mexican laborer, Keter Lebel. Turns out Keter was one of those bad hombres Trump was trying to warn Vito about, because he's no longer on the project after he disappointed Vito. I don't know whether he left or Vito just fired him, but I don't think you guys are getting Super Killer this year. I tell you to ask him about it on Twitter, but bro privated his account too. God damn, what a mess. Imagine fucking up the production of your debut crowdfunded comic this badly, and further screwing over your backers who you've kept waiting for nearly a year, all while you were dunking on Eric July for doing this way more efficiently than you. Do you know what that makes you, Vito? Apparently, it makes you confiscate royalty.
Guys keep telling me that I'm mad that my comic failed compared to ISOM. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel pretty good about $90,000.
Well, feel even better about 100,000. That is 6 figures, which is, you know, makes you kind of Comicsgate royalty at that point.
Oh, and one more thing about Vito. Something interesting happened with him. It was him pulling Eric July, as the dickheads would say. Riley, being committed to the bit, said he was going to pull up to Vito's place and give him that young Clipper experience.
Fighting, and if you want me to not talk about you, I won't talk about you. Why don't we just...
Bro!
You don't even have to be my friend. I won't talk about you.
You hat's over
If
the
that's what
fence,
you need-
Vito! The hat is over the fence!
Riley, you're both clearly mad at me. You're screaming at me. Are you gonna say
Me
you're both
screaming
not mad
is
at me?
not a sign of anger, Vito! It's a sign of fucking patience!
You're not angry.
Vito wasn't a fan of this idea and threatened to call the police if Riley showed up at his place. This pissed Dick off, because how are you gonna act like this after spending a fucking year going after young Ripper for the exact same behavior? Man, I gotta say that I don't buy any of this. Like, maybe it's real, but this shit just stinks of kayfabe. Just fake drama to stir up attention for the show. But you know what isn't phony? What is verifiably not kayfabe? Remember when I said that Dick's a troll who can dish it out but can't really take it? Well, there's this guy, Jesse, who has a long-running podcast called Pod Awful. Dick and Jesse have a little history with each other that resulted in Jesse getting the "he who must not be named" treatment on Dick's show. You know how funny Dick thought Riley's crusade against Eric July in Texas was, and how much he was seething when Riley got arrested for it? Well, apparently, A-logging ceases to be funny for Dick when it hits a little too close to home. Because one Pod Awful fan pulled up on Dick Masterson's LA mansion and gifted him his favorite animal, a cow. The funniest part about this, besides Dick mauling about it, is that he tried to blame Eric July. It's not that Dick doesn't know it was Jesse, it's that he doesn't want to give Jesse any attention or acknowledgement at all. Put from @Dick Masterson and Jesse in the Twitter search bar, and you get nothing. This Latinx has been on X since way back in 2009, but he's never mentioned Jesse's name once in 13 years. Apparently, internet trolling god Dick Masterson can't handle another internet troll. But Mikey, why won't Dick say Jesse's name? Well, let me put you on some game. Several years ago, Jesse had a Patreon. He had a tier in it called World War. Now, despite not even having any content in this tier yet, Patreon took his page down. Why? Well, because on a show he did back when he was on Maddox's network that was behind a paywall, he used the N-word once. Actually, it was because Jesse insulted Dick and called him a worm. Dax got super in his fifis about this and got his audience to go after both Maddox's sponsors.
So Don Chaco, who's on the phone, you heard the exchange. You heard the horrible exchange on Maddox's Madcast Media Network, supported by Maddox and Ruck Ali. You questioned Maddox about it on Twitter. You said, hey, did someone maliciously drop the N-bomb against one of Dick's friends? And you said, I think that your sponsors would want to know what kind of shit they're supporting.
Was this on the podcast? Or?
No. This was on his network, but it doesn't matter who.
It
doesn't matter who said it. It was part of the network.
Oh, okay.
It was on his network. It's on his network.
And Jesse's Patreon. Jesse got even though, because when Dick Masterson got his big break in show business, a Pizza Hut commercial, somehow a clip of Dick saying the N-word was discovered.
When you're raped by a pack of
That commercial Dick was in never aired, and Dick's acting career has been stagnant ever since. And that's why Dick won't say Jesse's name. He can dish it out, but he can't take it. Man, Ethan Van Sciver really tied Comicsgate to some winners.